worries. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Updated all the time.
We have agenda addition. Is there any additions to the agenda?
Yeah, I have one about.
7.3 or 6.2? 7.3?
Yeah, I guess. See plan one?
Yeah.
7.3 actually.
Seven.
Yeah. We'll put that under 7.3. Is there any other additions?
I'll move the agenda as amended.
And that's amended and approvable.
Or with the addition.
Just the addition, yeah.
I should have said that.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor? No? Okay, the December 13th, 2017 regular council meeting minutes. And December 19th, the special council meeting minutes have both been included. And we get, somebody get Pardon? All in favor? Yes.
You approve both?
Yeah.
This is the right button.
Okay, so then we can go to, I guess we can go to number 6 or enough time to talk on that, you know?
I think so.
Yeah. We'll step down to number 6, which is council's request for information. 6.1 repayment of council fee sheets. There is an attached sheet, but Sheree, do you want to?
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring this forward pretty quickly. I just thought this might be a little bit easier if we would approve our sheets before we go and get paid. Because if there's any additions or corrections or anything, we get paid and then we have to go back and then take them off later. I just thought this would be a cleaner way of doing it, just to approve first and then you get paid.
The only thing that I see with this is, I think we all make mistakes, and I think it's very prudent that we show the public that we make mistakes. And when we make that mistake, it gets corrected, and it gets put back on. I think if it always looks clean, something that's always clean to me is something that might have something behind it and dirty. This way it looks like we get to see us with our warts and all, and I have no problem with that. If I miss a meeting or I make it up the next one, it's not gonna hurt me one way or another. It's just the transparency of it.
Yeah.
That people will see that, oh, you didn't make that meeting, oh well, you took it off the next time. Good deal.
I just figured discussion within the meeting is still transparent too, so both ways transparent, you correct it, either that one meeting or the next one. So I figure both ways are transparent. I just think it's better for us to approve them, and then you also make corrections there too. And if there's any mistakes, and then you don't get paid till after you approve them. So that's what I was thinking.
No, doesn't, yes I do. Doesn't matter to me what way you do it.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I don't think, I think the way that we've been doing it has worked fairly well, and there's a few things that happen during the year, always is, and we correct them. And if we don't see them, somebody else points them out to us, and I think you've got to work on trust, and trust should start at the council, I think, so it's, and if something like this were to be implemented, I think it's better to be done at the organizational meeting. So, no, I think the way we're doing it is fine.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to point out that if council approves this motion, that you won't get basically paid in January, your next payment will come out the last working day of February. Just so that you're aware.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that would be an issue, that's not the issue as I see it. I just think that the system has worked very well and will continue to do so.
Yes, Councilor Jennings?
I can just see that we're always gonna be behind a little bit, because by the time we can bring it into council and have it approved that time, we're not gonna be have to at the end of that month, and then like to work with, say, administration, in order to change theirs in there. Like I had no problem, say, like with the other, and I have had parts changed and corrected on my behalf and others, and as long as we can correct it within ourselves, by all means, I got no problem with that.
For me, it wasn't about the corrections or transparency, it was just about process.
And as I said, Sheree, to me, I can see it working either way, so, but is there any other discussion?
Well, and I also just wondered if it would be easier for administration, rather than going back and redoing it, you know, taking off.
What do you feel?
I don't know, we have to ask her that. So,
Larry, did you say there was an attachment with this?
There was a,
yeah, there was-
Oh, just remember, I've been looking through my package and I'm going, I didn't see that. Yeah, I missed something.
Yeah, and that's,
Oh.
It's, I can't see any difference with workload.
No difference?
yeah.
No. I might not chase you as hard as I do at the end of the month, but that would be.
And really from a transparency piece, we're either discussing it at the meeting before or we're discussing it.
yeah, so either way, they're both transparent.
They're both transparent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
16.
it was just an idea I brought forward, so if I can see that no one's really going for it, I won't put forward the motion, so.
Okay. So you pull that motion, or we don't put a motion.
Yeah, the motion's not there, so. There was a suggested one, so.
Okay. That public tax, okay.
It's just a quick conversation.
Under our new business, request for decision, public tax sale, December 12th, 17, number 71.
So, Mr. Chairman, basically, we just wanted to give the information to council and have council make the decision. Usually on a tax sale, when properties don't sell, we take ownership of them. That way, we have control over what we do, if there's any improvements on the site, if it's a bare lot, when we tender it out, if we clean it up. All those costs get added back to the tax account, and then when we do sell it, we're hopefully able to recover some of those costs, and sometimes we never do. We have taken back a couple of houses, and we have found out that there's asbestos in them, which makes, you know, dealing with these properties more expensive for the county. Also, the liability then is on the county, but as Sharon and I have talked about many times, even if we don't take ownership of this property,
Mutual ownership.
we'll end up with a liability anyway when we go to sell. If we don't take ownership of it, then it just sits. We don't charge any more taxes, but it just sits on our roll. We can't really sell it. We can't clean it up. We can't even get entry to it because it's not ours to see what the problems are. But we just wanted to bring to your attention that there is some liability with taking it back. Council may decide that they want to go in, clean this property up, and then place it for sale or place vacant lots for sale. We have torn down buildings in the past, but we just wanted to give you the opportunity to say whether you wanted us to take ownership of it or not.
The ones with asbestos in them, we have ownership of them anyhow because they leave them, but this way here, we can actually go in and take the asbestos out and clean it up, and or old head machinery or old vacant house that some kid might call in vacant, and we're liable. And we might as well own them so that we can clean them up and deal with them. What do you think, Beth?
Yeah, I think we should have that, if we have ownership, then we get the option of dealing with them if there's something comes up that's a hazard.
Any other discussion? Councilor Bender?
So is it, laws or rules that before you take any building down, that you have to do an assessment on it?
Pretty well nowadays, yeah. And most people won't even entertain buying a vacant lot anymore without a phase 1 environmental study on it, which we have done a pile of those in Bymore, and we were able to tender them out basically took the highest bid and got rid of them.
To, Mr. Chairman, to that, if you were doing it privately or anything, I think you can do what you want, but we are the county, and as the county, we are held to a higher standard. In anything we do, whatever, whether it's building something or tearing something down, we're held to a higher standard, so, yeah, I think we have to carry that.
Just a question through the administration, how many buildings are sitting on these lots?
There's just the one on lot 1, it's a kind of an old shed, and the other 2 are vacant. They had, a trailer on them, and so they pulled the trailer up, both of them are lost. And the only time that I would suggest the council really that you didn't take ownership of the lot is if we knew the landowner was financially able to clean up the property. We're getting mail back, we don't know where these people have gone, they've just disappeared, never showed up, never made any contact with us about the tax sale or anything, so pretty sure that
They don't.
they can't afford to do anything, so they're just basically trying to get back to us.
Do we need a motion here to take this land?
I'd like one also.
Okay, I will make the motion that we take these properties back for tax recovery. In the council's name.
Any other discussion?
So basically, there aren't any real buildings, as per se, that could be possibly having asbestos in it.
There's the building that's on there now is like an old shop, and of course it's got some floors in it, old linoleum floors, is that in a spot, plus it's been painted, so it's probably a.
So what does it cost in order to have an assessment done on it, if someone come in and check it?
It varies, we had one done on a couple houses in Bymore and one in, Indiana a couple years ago, and it was right around under that $10,000 mark.
Well, it's
No, just for the all 3 of them.
As Councilor Grover stated, we're, as an animal, we're gonna be responsible anyhow, so it's.
The liability.
Somebody falls in there, based on the day, down to some teenager or whatever.
Any other discussion?
Just a question through administration, can you tell us what lot it is, or whose lot it is that,
Where it's at. Yeah, where it's at, I guess.
I don't have the owner's name, but I do know that it's pretty close to what you would call the downtown area, the fire hall. Sharon said it's quite close to kind of that one lot we have where there's the fire hall and there's the trailer dumping station, where it kind of across the street from the old post office.
Yeah, okay, that's the one I thought you were getting, kind of just a dilapidated shed.
Yeah.
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 Not sure what that was used for on this day.
The likelihood of asbestos might be kind of slim.
Slim in that one.
Yeah.
We just wanted to raise council's awareness that there are costs associated with taking back these lots when there are repairs or improvements.
I don't think we do anything that doesn't cost.
And I think, probably, Mr. Chairman, that the least we could do if it was dangerous, we could board it up or something and sit it for a couple of years if we had to.
But if we own the property, then we can deal with it.
Yes, but I mean, that's one way we could deal with the, cost to mitigate the, chance of libel, I guess.
Okay, Councilor Jenner?
What happens in the case that if we didn't take it on, there was an accident there? Who's responsibility?
Well, they would, if someone wanted to be compensated, they would sue the owner on record of the title, and then they would sue the county because basically we didn't take ownership on it, but yet it still is within our jurisdiction.
So it's back on us.
Eventually, it would get us, yeah.
And we aren't seeing, like you said, nails being returned, we don't know what the owner is even at, Councilor Jenner.
It's ours without even taking ownership for the liability.
Our own building. Any other, Councilor?
How many years have they been vacant?
Ooh, well, they basically have to be vacant 3 years before we basically get them to tax sale. So, this one, I think was vacant before, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say minimum 3 years.
No other discussion? So as per Council Solberg's motion, all in favor? Unanimous?
don't see them, but I heard a truck.
Because this next one is gonna take us some time, so.
Or you could jump to 7-3 if you
Okay,
want.
so, we'll jump to 7-3, under new business, Seed Clean. Counselor.
I'm not going to go to, Grand Prairie, my wife's had an accident, and I don't wanna get any farther than about 2 hours away. If I go, I'm gonna go up to the seed plant. And just in case she had severe concussion and, yeah, in the hospital for 2 days, not travel.
So you're going to the seed plant?
I'm going to seed plant, I'm asking permission to go there, but I
Mr.
don't wanna be 8 hours or 9 hours away.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion that do we not have that on record that?
I think we can go, I just wanted to bring it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that Dave goes to the
Clear it
seed
up.
cleaning plant. Okay, conference, when is it, Dave?
It's the same day,
And where's it at? Okay.
same day, so.
Just for clarification, are we paying registration or is the seed cleaning plant?
I think they pay the registration and we pay the DM and the,
Okay,
that's
and,
what it normally is.
okay, and Dave gave me the heads up, so we have the rooms blocked for him and everything. So the registration for the ASB conference, after the conference is over, then Quentin can make an application. If they
Yes,
make a
I'm on
profit, then they will reimburse us for anyone that didn't attend. And they'll only give us 90% of the registration back, but, it was only $515.
It's a problem, I'll look after it.
No, it's the business.
So my family comes first, then the county, and then my farm. That's how it goes.
Where do you come in there, Dave?
I don't get to count, I'm just a worker.
You're number 4, so.
But yeah, there was something else, oh yes, because we're switching, bringing the rest of council up to speed. We're, as of June, end of June, George is second in command, and Dean is going to be the head guy. So I'm gonna we want to introduce Dean to all the other seed cleaning plant operators, plus the council, the other council guys out there, good to have a lot of input into, as we do into our plant. Thank you.
Any other discussion? As for the nomination of Counselor Nyberg, all in favor? Unanimous.
I don't know what happened to our delegation, I guess they.
We're gonna have a
You could do the bylaw, you could do the bylaw.
Sure, if you wanna go ahead, you
Well,
wanna?
they aren't up till 10:30.
I know there's a 10:15,
10:15.
somebody's supposed to be in for, off camera. Okay, bylaw, under 10, bylaw. Bylaw 1583-17 to amend land use bylaw 1443-10 as amended by resorting a portion of the southeast of 1940-20 W west of 4th Meridian from agriculture A district to public services PS district.
Mr. Chairman, the Municipal Planning Commission approved the subdivision in November, and one of the conditions on it is to rezone the property from agricultural to public service. The property will belong to the county as part of the discussions with the developer of the estate. So we're asking for giving it first reading so we can advertise it for public hearing.
Councilor Nyberg?
I'll give you a motion for first reading, to go to first reading, public hearing.
Any discussion?
When will public hearing, Mr. Chairman, when will public hearing?
February the 14th, Mr. Newton, if you'd like that.
Okay, Councilor Jenner?
So, Johan, like that one little sliver of land that's right to the very north, is that gonna be dealt with separately than what this one is?
So the 5.5 acre parcel will be zoned to public service, but the road widening will just become road plan. It will not have a zoning on it. And that little triangle swivel of land will also be road plan.
So that would be a separate one, not that what this one is?
Yeah, I think they're gonna put all of that into one road plan, the whole 32 feet plus that little sliver of land.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
So this is just rezone.
Okay, Councilor Grover?
14 14th is council meeting, is our council meeting.
That's the public hearing we'll have at 1
So
o'clock.
that's good. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? As per Councilor Nyberg's, first reading to publish here, motion for first reading to public hearing, all in favor? Sheree, are you in favor for the, what? We're voting,
Rezone,
we're voting.
rezone.
Yeah, for first reading to public hearing.
I'm just giving her an update
Yeah.
on what this little piece is, what.
Yeah. And that was from
Okay,
last.
all in favor? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
You can go to unfinished business if you like. You've got a few minutes before.
Yeah, let's go, okay. Jumping all over the place here.
Where are you going now?
Number 8.
Home?
Unfinished business, 8.1. Just keeping our IT people on their toes. Dan and Andrew Webster, Reed Township Road 35.
201.
Council Grover.
Yes.
This was, Councilor Grover asked for this to be brought back to the January meeting. I don't think we've really done anything with it, basically waiting for direction on the budget.
Council Grover.
When we get done the budget though, what this is for is we were just doing, dust controls in front when they're hauling gravel and stuff, but we don't have a criteria of how we do it, and we have to have it. And, I think that we're gonna have to go to, because of the finances, and it's fairly expensive to put these dust controls down, and maybe even if they live on a haul road or a road that's hauled on lots, I won't say haul road, that they pay at least half of that. thing. We've got to talk about.
Who is they, David?
They being the ratepayer, and us being the county.
Would it be the same distance as a normal road, or would it have to be more because of the amount of heavy traffic? Like, would they have to have more?
Length? No, length is a quarter-eighth of a mile, and length usually is low.
Mr.
But I think that we have to go to budget and decide where we're going with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember.
And is there private pits on this road as well?
Yeah.
So, this is one that I will make it known every time, the private operators need to pay their fair shares, where our gravel pits in this county are actually taxed less than our core farmland. There's no tax involved in these things. We need to deal with this, and I'm in favor of a gravel aggregate levy in this county to help pay for items like this. It's getting more and more expensive to run in this county, the operations, and we need to figure out ways to make everybody pay their own fair share. I'm in favor of what you're saying, Dave. I just don't think that the county and the ratepayers should have to pay the full shot when the person that's making literally millions of dollars out of those pits walks away with no input.
But I think I wanted to bring it back so it was on the radar, so that when we go to do our budget, and we've already started on our budget and stuff, that it can be brought up so that we have some, if you wanna charge the private sector for part of their use of the down the road or whatever, but we have to have something. We've been doing it as a one-off, and every time you do these here dust control as one-off, you're going the wrong way. You have to have something set up to charge it back properly where it belongs.
It's cold out, but I'm not sure if hell's freezing over, but I agree with Dave.
Probably is.
Oh, it is on tape. Oh, right, it's on a big video. Good.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know we talked about doing a policy review, and I don't know whether we talked about, dates or anything, but I think there's a few things that we need to go over and, make more up to date, I think, and this is probably one of them.
The policy review committee hasn't had a chance to meet yet.
Yeah, December.
Let's blame it on Shauna, I guess, for.
Got big shoulders.
I'm re-voting on it. But to be realistic about it, realistic about it, it used to be 1 or 2 dust controls. Now we're moving quite a bit of aggregate out of the country, the county included, Starland included, privates included, and we have to deal with it. It just can't be a one-off every time. somebody wants dust control. And I have all the gravel pits in the company. So it's a problem for me, and Larry here.
So,
Would you like to table this to be brought back after, budget?
I would think.
Just need a motion for that.
I would make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion by Mr. Nixon, all in favor? Yeah,
Mr. Streckman is here, he's just signing in, so
Okay.
if you're ready for your,
he's just coming in now?
yeah, they're just signing in. Yeah, they'll be in a second or two.
Okay.
Can we do 8.2? Is that gonna be a long one?
8.2, request for decision, Town and Country Museum budget payment in gravel and cash.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, we went back and looked at the, what we were paying the museum last year, and for some reason we shorted them $2,000. So we were gonna bring that up to date, and then with their request, it's a further $2,000 per year, which has, been what they usually do, for the last 13 years that I've been here. So we can either, table this, and talk about it with budget, or, Councilor Nixon was going to find out whether they'd be willing to accept, some of that allocation in gravel or cash. I'm just not sure if you've had a chance to.
No, actually, Councilor Gender was going to do that, but seeing that I'm on that committee, I certainly will, talk to the museum committee and just to see if they would accept that. There's probably a meeting coming up shortly.
Would you have use for some of this pile? No, go ahead, there, that may be short haul, just put underneath for possibly about that.
Oh, a good idea.
Councilor Nixon.
I'll make myself a memo.
We can table this.
What do you wanna do with the $2,000 that's still outstanding? Where are we at on that?
We were going to remit it because it was approved in the budget to remit it in 17, so we'll remit it as part of our year-end work, and then we'll go forward into 18.
Any other discussion?
Give them gravel out, I need some, but not all strong.
So can we get a motion to move the budget? As part of the budget discussion?
No, I think it is part of the budget, I think it's just, we need a motion for that?
Just table it until budget.
Okay, yeah, certainly, I will make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Unanimous? Okay, our first delegation is here. Welcome, Rick Strang. We'll do an introduction, Rick, around the table, so that if you don't know everybody, that you'll have a name to face.
Some of them I know, but I know there's new faces, so.
Okay, we'll start with Marlene.
Marlene Hanson, executive assistant.
Thank you.
Ernie Gender, Stepper.
Shreeds or Screen Buffalo Lake.
James Nyberg, Gershman, South Warden.
You got Cassidy Assistant CEO?
Larry Clark, Walkie Gavin.
Dave Grover, Big Valley.
Wayne Nixon, Denali, morning, Rick.
Wes Dilbert, Glenn Randier.
Nikki Thorstensen, communications.
Andrew Brishik, technology.
Sean Benson.
Rick Strankman, MLA, so they say from Grubmiller Stettler. Pleased to be here this morning. I'm happy that the sun's out a little bit. When I left home this morning, it was just past dark 30. And the light snow coming down, and I was worried about the roads, but.
Rick, we'll just catch the back ones here too. So.
Oh, sorry.
Johan Vanderbeck, planning and development.
I'm Chambers, Stettler.
Thank you.
And that's my assistant, Gary Weileman, the shy one.
Okay, okay. Continue then, please.
Well, I'm happy to be here, as I've stated, and I have two things that I'd like to have interactive conversation with with you, and I'm sure you may have other issues that you want to bring to me. The first is a request that we got from MLA Sandra Jensen, the infrastructure minister, and she's asking for infrastructure building requests or funding requests, and it's somewhat of a I'll call it a two-edged or double-edged sword, because as you probably know and are dealing with, is reduced budgets from taxation, and in one case quite possibly you're faced with abandoned oil wells and the lack of taxation revenue in that regard, so that may cause budget issues with you. And so in opposition, which we are in the legislature, I am as a UCP MLA now, when we make conversations about potential overspending by the government, they come back to us by saying, well, what is it? You want money on this hand, but you're you know, saying to cut back on the other hand. So in that regard, I haven't given any specific requests for direct capital funding, but I have in the southernmost portion of the constituency 3 potential irrigation development project studies and developmental processes that are in the process of going forward and could be going forward. And that, in my opinion, leads to greater economic development. But I spoke at the Drumheller Town Council earlier this week and asked them, it's my understanding that you should have gotten a similar letter from the minister to highlight any requests you may have. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't really know, but if you do have those requests, I'd like to, with our organization, compile them, because there are things that developmental requests that you have that I'm not specifically informed of or aware of, and that's part of the information I'd like to take back from you. It's part of one of the reasons. The other thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and I when I spoke to the Stettler Town Council, they talked about crime and and as many of you know, rural crime and much crime in many areas across the province because of economic hardship, however that's generated, is skyrocketing. And if you have methodologies or ways that you like to have me interact with other agencies, unfortunately I also in Drumheller the other day crossed paths with our MP Kevin Sorensen, and I didn't get a chance to specifically ask him about that, but I know that he's talking about having some sort of rural interactions with his constituencies in regards to crime and that too. So with that, I leave it to your questions or comments, input. I prefer an interactive conversation, and I hope you do too.
Thank you. Councilor Jenner?
I guess like you're talking about having infrastructure. Like I find that, say, like within the county here, and maybe you can correct me, but like the part that we have is, say, like bridges. There was a bridging fund that was kind of slashed, and I'll see like that's quite an important part for ourselves that we have to kind of continue going forward with. It's been an existing one, and it's going to continue to exist from here until well into the future.
Making a note.
Thank you.
Rick, also too, I know it, like Les had met with Brian Mason. There was a meeting over in Knowles, was it Les? Red Deer. And we requested there was funding on a secondary road, which is just from the Indian, what was secondary, K55?
K55, yes.
And it is from that, which road, south?
589.
589 for 6 miles, for 6 miles.
Yeah.
It is one of the longest secondary roads in the province, and it's a very poor piece of road there, but every time we talked up in Edmonton at our convention, with transportation, and we talked to that, and it is one of those projects that just kind of gets pushed to the side. The last letter we got back was kind of, we'll just go back to Red Deer, wasn't it?
Yeah. For some reason, it does fall between the cracks, because there was a section of road that's within the county of Stettler that, was upgraded not to a pavement standard, but just to a terrace standard some years ago, which the county partnered in with the Alberta government to do that portion. And then, of course, that began to fail. And then the special areas, they got some money to take over the road, so they have redone their section because they have an agreement with the government, and they're basically an extension of the government. They're not a municipality in special areas, so their portion is okay. It's just the 6 miles within the county, the longest secondary road in the province, that is in pretty bad shape, and it seems to fall through the cracks because it's neither gravel nor pavement. So it has fallen through the cracks numerous times, and we've drawn it to their attention numerous times, and it's been to not too much success at this point, but I guess if you can bring that forward, it's a very, very small section in a long highway that needs to be brought up to standard.
Just a question, please, Les. You mentioned that it's the longest secondary road or longest unimproved portion of a secondary road in the province.
855 is the longest secondary highway in Alberta.
Okay.
But this portion that's not up to standard is only 6 miles.
But is the rest of the highway, 855, in other portions of the province is improved?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. It's not, I've heard this commentary before, so I fully understand your positioning here.
And it links to Highway 9, which, is a pretty important road to get for transportation of agricultural products, gravel and everything.
Market roads are important.
It is, because that's the link to Saskatchewan and Manitoba and Calgary and everywhere, so we gotta get there.
Yeah, and Rick, there's two trucking companies, one hauls barley and one hauls fluid. Won't use that road. Their drivers are told not to go on that road, go around it and come down to Dealey, I forget what the Dealey highway is. It's farther haul, but they refuse to send their trucks down there. So you'll get, when we get to Edmonton and we tell them, well, the truck use isn't weak, that if you turn it into a gopher trail, there's nobody's gonna use it. And them guys are told if they get the drivers, do not go on there. It costs them way too much to maintain the trucks if they gotta go on that 6 miles to go over. And it's another, I think, 18 or 19 miles to go around it, they go around it.
It's interesting that you should bring that up, Dave, because out in closer to where I live, there's a secondary 899, and I asked them, like, how do you know what the traffic counts are? And they said, and some of the responses from transportation guys, well, we have general overmapping. And I said, well, I haven't seen anybody out there, with a little counter or somebody physically counting. And in our area, the person that did come and do the physical counting only arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning and left at 3 to 4 in the afternoon or whatever. Well, that's in rural areas, like just west of my house there, with some intensive oil field operation there, it's access down to the secondary road. Well, if you're there, I was there one morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we actually, we had to stop, both sides had to stop for the traffic that was going this way, so they apparently make allocations for those weaknesses, but I have no proof of it. And I would, let you know that, and council know that I personally witnessed what I perceived to be a weakness in that counting process. So that's well taken as well. No, if I could just add, I full well know in rural areas the value of market roads and the benefits to it. If there's an improvement to the road, such that it's not filled with potholes, even a soil cement surface that gives a good base and can keep the dust down, people will use that. It's part of commerce.
I'm just going off the road back to your crime when our county has formed a crime prevention committee, and so we're gonna be getting together and getting together with our police and whatnot to establish things to help.
I'd be happy to be involved in that in some fashion. whether it's through notification of the people, constituents. Have you had a chance to have a meeting with the local constabulary in that regard, or?
We just formed it in December, so in
Okay.
January we're gonna be bidding the call out.
Okay. Well, no, please, you know, and Gary has past personal experience in the force, so, you know, and we've got many major complaints out northeast of town here about stuff like that going on, and it's awkward, but people have great fear of their personal well-being, home invasion style things that are happening primarily more in central Alberta, but it's not uncommon out in the little community at Youngstown north and south. Had some vandals going through there, figuratively shopping at the farm homes.
We have been in contact with the local RCMP, and we are working on some solution based issues, I guess, hopefully that will come in the near future. So, as much as the county's bylaws can help out the RCMP in doing that, and I know Kevin Sorensen also, I spoke to him just before Christmas, and he's part of a task force, or setting up a task force in, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but I want to say Vegreville, but I'm not sure if it's up in that area. And then he was interested in ours as well. He's going to come down and hopefully meet with us once or twice.
Well, that's why I'd like to coordinate to, you know, I mean, part of it is public awareness, but when an infraction is in the process of occurring, then it becomes an extremely difficult situation, and our provincial legal court system is overwhelmed with a lot of this stuff, and the system is blocked.
And I won't, sorry, but I won't blame the RCMP. I think it is, you're absolutely right, it is the legal system that's not taking full use of their power to stop some of this that's going on. So, and I think that's where it has to really be concentrated on.
Yeah, that's my comment as well. I think we draw it to the province's attention that they need to step up their judicial system, because it's so far behind now. I mean, a lot of these property crimes just get swept right off the table because there's so many more pressing, I guess, crimes that are ahead of these. So there's not even much point in bringing these ones forward. So I think before they correct that, property crimes aren't going to be dealt with.
Well, and I don't know if it's a fair observation or not, but I did have occasion to go to the Red Deer courthouse some time ago in the fall, late fall, and they talk about upgrading that facility, but I would like to know whether or not the facilities here or in Drumheller, for example, are in full use. Because I think there's ways that with modern communication and technology that these rural facilities outlying, you mentioned Vermilion, for example, or Lloydminster, Drumheller, Stettler, that do have court facilities, that they could maybe be used to a greater extent. They want to spend vast amounts of money in both Red Deer, both for hospital upgrade and courthouse expansion, but I do know that, and this was a horrible situation where the young gentleman from our area there, Nicholas Byer, was killed at the Olds College, and ultimately the court case got transferred from that jurisdiction, the jurisdiction of Didsbury, to Calgary, which was a horrible hardship for the family, whereas quite possibly there's no reason that they couldn't have done some, I'll use the word mediation of the consequences for the victims of the case to have the court held in Stettler, if the facilities would allow it.
I think our facility, our court is only used 1 day a week.
I think it's 2 now,
Or the judges, but
they have family court.
There's still a few days left in 1 week.
yeah.
Well, and there may be some other unforeseen reasoning for that, but the idea of having it all centralized when you have other facilities that with some innovative ingenuity that could be used, I don't understand, you know, the reason for mass spending of vast tax dollars in a central
Rick,
area.
is to support what Councilor Nyberg said too in regards to the RCMP. We had a bunch of our farm buildings gone through in April of this year. Equipment, our stuff was stolen. I described it to the RCMP to the point where I recovered it. And then I was phoned just before Christmas. It was taken out of court for insufficient evidence. And I talked to the RCMP investigating officer and I said, you know, this is ridiculous. I told you what it looked like. I described the stuff. I got everything back and he said, you're speaking to the converted. He said, this is what's happening to us right now. So really it was a waste of, very much a waste of the RCMP's time to come out and the time that they spent on it and really my time, because nothing happened over it and somebody just walked away from it. They caught the individuals.
So they weren't charged though?
They weren't charged with the theft of my.
They were charged, they were just, the
Charges were dropped.
But dismissed,
thrown out of
yeah.
court. So what happens, right, we get, 14 charges, 2 of them happen to be personal, crimes and the other are property crimes. Well, it's easy to prosecute a personal crime because I beat you up, you know I did that, you testify, it's done, right? Whereas did I have, it was in my possession, but did I actually steal it or was it just in my possession? And, there's so many, I could have purchased it, there's so much more work to go into prosecute it. You just say, we'll take the 9 times out of 10, they plead guilty to the personal crime anyways, because they know they're gonna get it. And I'll plead guilty if you throw all the property crimes out, and that's what happens.
But
Time to time.
it was a very big waste of policing time on that one at our place.
No, so you can understand their frustration as well, right, in the system. So, and then they end up trying to, because they know of their frustration, they adjudicate it, if you will, because they know it's frustrating.
I know there was sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna change the,
I just want one more comment on crime. Years ago, and I know I think it was the mayor of Sylvan Lake, and I'm gonna say 12, 15 years ago, had proposed that we actually have a police force per population. Personally, I know when I was a young man and carousing around the town of Stettler in my youth, we had a lot more RCMP, and they used to tap me on the shoulder lots and keep me on the straight and narrow path. But we had 3,000 people in the community. Now, we're upwards of 6,000 people in the town of Stettler and 5,000 in the county. Same amount of RCMP members, so the proportion of members to population has considerably dropped. So I think that's something that should be looked at as well, that there's a possibility that we look at that per population police force. So I'm not proposing a police state, but you gotta take care of it.
Just one for clarification, was that last year you were crowding around?
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, yeah, thanks Dave, and thanks for calling me young, buddy.
Just call you young, I just call you girl.
I'm just changing the topic, Rick, but I'm part of a ag plastics recycling group, provincial group, and they have terms of reference and they've written a white paper outlining the direction that they want to take, and they will be approaching government in the near future to try and get some assistance and get the government to make some kind of a policy about recycling agricultural plastics, including the grain bags, the silage wrap, net wrap, twine, etc. So that's something that's underway right now, and we're just trying to come up with a way to introduce it that will be acceptable to the present government.
I'd be happy to figuratively fly that flag for you in the legislature if you wish, going forward, because as the UCP designated agricultural critic, we've heard that and before, and I'm pleased to hear your comments about creating a white paper or some definitive group. I know that they are recycling plastic jugs, etc., some of them, to the best of their ability. But yes, as opposed to Saskatchewan, which I live 6 miles from, where they do have some sort of a small process for recycling the grain bags, which are more and more popular in that jurisdiction. But please keep contact with me in that regard, because it's something that's a dire need to be properly disposed of.
And they're basing their terms of reference and the white paper information based on that Saskatchewan. What the Saskatchewan does right now, and BC to some extent, although theirs doesn't work as well. But you know, so some of the costs will be, well, the costs likely will be borne by the purchaser, but some of the companies that actually sell the ag plastics, the grain bags, etc., are willing to throw a little money in as well. So it's a work in progress. Hopefully it'll be started sooner than later.
I think there was some companies down by Rockyford or somewhere in there that were trying to initiate grain bag reprocessing and recycling as a commercial as a private commercial venture.
Wheatland County actually does have some going on right now, yes.
Okay, well, if they can achieve that, that would be excellent. But they need some sort of a gathering system, I guess.
Wayne, was there a colony in Granham or something that also was doing that?
Down there someplace, yeah, that's
But they ended up canceling just because they thought there was some actual profit to be made, and the colony just said they couldn't charge enough to make money on it.
no, there's a cost, and the one of the companies that are looking after this, Clean Farms, has come up with a cost that would be sustainable, I guess. So you pay about 5 to 7% extra for buying your grain bag or whatever it would be, your silage plastic or whatever, and then hopefully that would cover the cost of the program. So it would be a sustainable program, but we need some government direction, I guess, or policy, I guess, to make it work properly.
I know our little waste transfer facility out at Gadsby there, any given Saturday when you go there in the wintertime, half bins are plastic. There's a lot of us that have just been kind of trying to keep it from blowing around until there is a place to haul it to, like off the bales, because it is a pile of plastic.
Yeah, and clean plastic, I guess, is saleable. Dirty plastic isn't saleable.
Which you stripping bales on days like today.
Or silage plastic.
It's fairly difficult to keep every piece of grass or every piece of hay on it. But it is, they are fairly clean, but I wonder from our waste transfer facilities too, though, do they have a real problem with twine with getting in the tracks on the equipment? And I would think they would.
They don't typically.
It's all wheeled.
Barbed wire.
Barbed wire is worse, okay.
And apparently the net wrap is not too desirable to recycle.
Hard to handle, it's all about handling.
To you environmentalists, is there anybody that's washing it yet before they try to recycle it?
Don't know, Dave,
That's a question.
Well, there's a number of processes that I've seen where they tried to clean it before. I think the colony down south was taking it and had a few of the boys pressure washing it off. And even they, for free labor, couldn't get it to make it profitable.
So Quentin was saying just here, not last meeting or two, that there is places that will take the dirty plastic at a discount, so. Anyway, it's something that's been working on for 2 years, is now hoping to get underway soon.
Well, they may be able to washing it, they may be able to, when they apply heat to it, they may be able to gravitate that out like a dehydrator does in oil field processing, gravitate it out somehow. But then there's a cost to all that as well. So. But I'd be happy to work with you. I think it's an ongoing issue, and generally agriculturalists, i.e. farmers, are not polluters. We try to be stewards of the land. So if there's some sort of a reasonable way of maintaining that acronym or maintaining that processes of not polluting our farming operations, I think something that should be strived for.
Unfortunately, a lot of people burn it, good or bad. I mean, it gets rid of it, and it's, whether it causes more pollution than otherwise, I'm not sure, but that's how people, some people handle it.
If I could just return to the crime or the committee comment that Councillor Needs talked about, I'd be more than willing to, if we could, somehow coordinate with the MP Sorensen to have a joint meeting, or at least a visitation or a guest to help you to work forward this. And there may be other jurisdictions that may, neighboring jurisdictions that may want to be involved. I don't know, but I think it's the potentiality, councillors, is for our session, when our session broke on the 18th of December, I believe it was, the 18th of December, the message was that we would be returning to the legislature in the first week of February. I don't believe that will be the case, but we haven't received official notification of that and won't be. But, so there is some urgency for myself, at least, to try and get some of this stuff going forward before we go back into session, because it's important for the constituents, and if there's some way that we can coordinate communication or assist in that through our legislative roles, we'd be happy to do that.
When does Kevin sit again? Does anybody know?
That should be this month.
What's that?
That should be this month.
Yeah, so, yeah. I don't know where the committee's at. The committee hasn't even sat yet, so just appointed.
Well, I just want to reiterate my enthusiasm, if you will, to assist in that.
So we'll let you know when
Rick, and this takes us back to roads again, but even on our secondary gravels, I guess one of the biggest concerns for them also too was that most of the comments I had as I toured around before the election was people complaining about roads, but a lot of them are secondaries and how they're maintained versus how our county maintains our roads. So if there's conversation there, it's not projects, but it is actually maintenance of existing, and it's the contractors that are hooked to those sections of road that are the ones grading.
And you're talking about secondary roads, but also single and double digit roads are, rather than the triple digit roads. With the fall storm that we had and the snow and stuff like that, we were figuratively snowed under by phone calls of disapproval of that and how that goes forward. And I believe those contracting requirements will be reassessed going forward.
Just please don't forget the gravel, the gravel roads that our farmers have to travel on.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the secondary gravel.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the public think that they are our county roads. We have had conversation with the transportation on this, and they didn't like my suggestion of telling everybody their phone number, so I'm not sure. We float the calls, and then we have to try and figure out how to get through to people in Hannah to let them know. It's much quicker if the public can call them directly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get the point a little bit more.
On both sides.
Absolutely.
On the side of the constituent and the side of the receiver of the call, yeah.
Absolutely. We don't want to be the middleman, right? or late.
By people whose driveways go onto those roads, that, you know, they don't appreciate the fact that they're driving on substandard roads all the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Is there any other,
House Road,
I think we'll
switch gears.
I sat on the Red River Users Group, and we had to send a couple of our, committee members up to Edmonton to talk to the powers to be, and because the ones from Old Man and, that they wanted more irrigation, using up the irrigation that's allowed for the Red River. So that's when you brought up irrigation, I thought I would wait till everybody got their time. But we got up there to the present, governing party, and we can't deal with this, we're not gonna deal with this till maybe when we're in the next election. That give us some hope anyhow, but, the three that you are champion or whatever, are they taking off the Red Deer River and not in the Red Deer River Basin?
well, the Special Areas Water Supply Project is what some would say an interbasin transfer, even though it doesn't flow out, would be the lifting of the water from the Red Deer River out through Buffalo Lake and to the East Country under the Sounding Creek side of it. That's been diminished significantly because of supposed controversy upstream. And I haven't gotten really fully to the bottom of that, but the environmental impact assessment will be going ahead in that regard. The other project is the I will call it the improvement of a lifting canal or pipe system that lifts water again from the Red Deer River up to the Dead Fish Lake Reservoir. It's near Hand Hills, just southeast or east of the Hand Hills there. And I don't fully know, and I haven't gotten the answer. I've got 2 phone calls to one government employee to understand, so I can get a better understanding of the potentiality of the development of irrigation from that. But because of the failure of the construction of the quality of that line, there wasn't the development of irrigation because of the uncertainty of the supply of water. And the third is there's a 27,000 acre project that's available in the southeastern portion of the small MD of Acadia, and they aren't even at the EIA or Environmental Impact Assessment Study process yet. In that case, the Crown owns a lot of the land that could potentially be developed. There's a whole bunch of study has to be done, and it's a 2 mile significant high lift of water to create the reservoir that's required. And all these are in requirement of certain, I'll use the word allocation of water. And I think that's what you're talking about, Councillor Grover, is I'm disappointed.
I have no problem with the valley and if they ever get theirs done. It's the other stuff where they already have irrigation and it goes to Lethbridge down there, and we should have a right, and the county of Stettler, because it runs right by our doorstep, and to irrigate here eventually, like might be my grandkids or my kids or whatever. They have the ability to irrigate. We got land here that will take been checked for irrigation. It's wonderful. You know, we pump it out of the river and we pump it 2, 3, 4, 5 miles. Some of the water that they're talking about, Rick and knows there, how far from Acadia Valley to the river?
From Acadia Valley to the river?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say 20 miles maybe, not even that far, right? But the project is adjoining the river or closer to the river,
Right.
so.
But I guess would be too, and not just.
Yeah, but I just wanted to reaffirm to you that I wouldn't be in agreement, and I don't think I can understand anybody in this constituency being in agreement to relinquishing water rights to another area. If that's where you're.
That's why I wanted to bring that to your attention later here, but we're on top of it just because we haven't got, and then they said, oh, Lays or old Dutch won't come up here anyhow, and you can't grow potatoes. Well, they grow potatoes, they're growing in here before. And if we grow a whole bunch of potatoes, they'll probably come and get them, or else we truck them with barley, we truck out here. if you fix that road down
I would like to. I've been talking about, and unfortunately, and I don't know how your minutes record my comments here, but as some would say, a figurative, typical politician, I've been gumming or talking about having a bus tour to go down and see. I have a video of one Carl Anderson, the founder of the Eastern Irrigation District, and how that all came to be in the late 30s, and the development that goes on right now. I know personally Jason Hale, the MLA or former MLA that is on the board for the EID. The development that goes on there, Dave, I wouldn't even use the word potatoes, because they're growing things like mint and onions, and there's alfalfa right now going.
Alfalfa seed is a big thing.
Well, alfalfa going from Coaldale, believe it or not, is going to Sedan or Jordan or somewhere over there, because they found that they can grow other high value crops over there, and our production costs, including the ocean freight transfer on a sea container, is still less than it costs them to grow water. Just to statistical, I visited, sorry for my ranting here, but you get me going here, Dave, Councillor Grover, sorry. Because I met with the Alberta irrigation guys, and some of the irrigation technology that they have now, they've actually been able to increase their irrigation acre simply because of irrigation efficiency. Rather than spraying it in the air like that, this low drop irrigation is 25 to 30% more efficient. Now they're dragging tubes in the ground, which gives them another high percentage. I can't quote the number because I don't know, but they're approaching 75% efficiency of use of water. So they've actually been able to increase the water. Like my question to these government people was, when you calculate an irrigable acreage, like I use a number of 27,000 acres, are they using that based off flood irrigation, or are they basing it off this sprinkler irrigation, or are they basing it off 1995 or 2005 technology where you can actually drag a tube in the ground and be approaching 75% efficiency of the water? There was an irrigation project on the WaterSmart irrigation website. There was in 1920 they were talking about you bringing Clearwater River water over to Nevis here, and then you lifting it there into Buffalo Lake and going out. It's called the Red Deer River Basin Irrigation Prospectus or something along those lines, by a guy by the name of William Pierce. And I've become good friends with a lady in the library in Edmonton. In fact, there's a documentary about that thick on all that development that was done. Initially, folks started in 1880. And some of the surveying then, because of their possibilities, was able to be done.
What year was that?
1880. They started before the province was even formed. But if you want to follow up with me on that, I'd be happy to.
I will do that. I will do that. But yeah, that Carl, whatever his name is,
Anderson.
Yeah, from Mazzano. When we went on our Extra tour down there, I watched that film.
Oh,
awesome video. It's a fun video. Just for entertainment value. It was
well,
good.
I tried to get it presented at the Special Areas Fall Advisory Council meeting and was blocked.
Really?
And please write that word in there. Yes, I was blocked from presenting.
It's a great video. I wanted to get one just for entertainment value. It's good.
Great foresight there. They wanted to sell it for $420,000 back in that day, the whole system, and they're actually the lawyer that was at the CP, lawyer who come and talked to him afterwards and said, no, that's an operation for 1 year. You should have them pay you that and give you to you for nothing. And that's what they got done. And that is why the people down there, as of today, because they took they got the land with it, and they don't pay anything for the use of the water. The water is free. They just gotta pay for their pivots and stuff to put it in. So
that's why I'll be 65 next year, and unfortunately my father passed from intestinal cancer at 64. So I have a personal agenda to try and leave a legacy of economic development, positive economic development for the province. And whether that benefits the siblings of any one of you as councillors or my siblings or family members, I think that that's something that we have to try and achieve, and to leave or to something like irrigation development. Water is going to be probably more valuable than oil in our lifetime, and certainly in our children's lifetime. So to try and shirk our moral responsibility, and you'll see a column coming out, if you haven't already this week, entitled Moral Responsibility to the Job That We All Have. Primarily, I was using my focus, so I think it's important.
Good that you're on site, that's a good deal. They've been the one you said going into Sounding Creek and all that, I was on that board until it disbanded. And they've been at that for a long time. I was born in 1956, that's when my uncle actually first surveyed. So that's 2 years.
Well, if you just go, Councillor Grover, if you go on the, I believe it's a Water Smart, or just Google Water Smart. Google is a marvelous tool for when it's 30 and 40 below. And yeah, you go on there and you'll see you can bring some of that up.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Strankman, Google's a wonderful tool when it's 30 below if you can get internet out in rural Alberta.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
That's another economic development.
There you go.
The two of them together.
Well, and I imagine, like in our region, yes, it's certainly, yeah. We have to realize how blessed we are in that regard, as opposed to many parts of the world. Just as a sidebar, through my relationship with our recently elected MLA Prasad Panda, and the greater than or 50% tariff that India has applied on the peas. Prasad was able to achieve a meeting with the Consul General of India for Western Canada. She's based in Vancouver, but she was in his office in Edmonton, and we had a direct conversation about the pea subsidy or tariff that they've imposed. And
on yellow peas.
Pardon me?
On yellow peas?
All peas.
All peas.
Not including lentils, though, I believe. I'm not sure on that, but I don't believe it's. But I mean, when you have a country's population of 1.4, 1.6 billion, it's a significant trade issue, and you don't know sometimes in this case Mr. Panda was able to talk directly to this person because of his familial heritage, where his father in India had significant political involvement. So it's an honor to work with people like that. But to our grassroots level and whatever, please keep me informed on your crime thing. I want to be involved in that. It's significant. Someone is going to be in my sort of a predictive mode. I feel that someone is going to get seriously hurt or be in a situation where they're going to create some serious legal consequence for themselves, and it's going to be totally unfortunate. So we have to try and be as proactive as we can on that regard.
Anything else, sir?
I'm fine, thank you, sir.
Any other questions, sir? Thank you very much for.
Thank you for allowing me.
Thank you.
We will be having dinner at noon if you want to. I know it's 45 minutes, but it's here.
Well, my assistant has me on a schedule here, so we'll see how that works out. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for allowing me. Appreciate that.
Let's go in the camera now, Mr. We are at the location.
Yeah, we should have.
I'll take us in the camera. willing to sit around and get our exciting meetings.
I'm the one man show over there today, otherwise I really would. I like listening to Rick's stories.
So would you like to deal with this before? As the next item.
I guess we can.
It is not actually on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, so it'll have to be something that was, brought through in camera, I guess.
So that would be back to the agenda addition?
No, I think what we would do is under 14.1, 14.1 is where we would deal with this. And as per discussions in 14.1, I'd like to make a motion that we instruct administration to create, design, build a offer to sale.
Request for proposal.
What's that? Request for proposal for sale of the ATCO trailers that are in the current town of Stettler Public Works Yard. No, how does that, county of Stettler, in the town of Stettler. Now we gotta know, how do you call them? Because it's still a public works yard, but it's not the one south of town.
That's good, right, that.
Administration site, right?
I could call it the administration site.
Yeah, the administration site.
So, sorry.
You know which one I'm talking about. Yes.
For clarification, so if we bring you back a request for proposal and you approve it, we're probably looking middle of February before we get it advertised, for sale and be able to move.
I don't think we even need to do that. You guys can set that up, can't you?
You can give administration the authority to put out an RFP
Yeah.
rather than request one come back.
But they'll still bring back any, they can advertise it and they can sell it.
Yeah, you still make the decision.
And as long as it has that, not necessarily the highest bidder will be taken, it doesn't put that clause in there.
That's exactly what I had in my hand up. You got that, Nick?
Yeah,
That would be-
and so
But I'm not
I'm also
following anything
thinking,
for now.
basically sold as is, where is type thing, so that we're not, the move would be responsible by the purchaser.
I think we need to see maybe possibly a copy of their insurance, like they'd have to be that piece in there, cause they're working on our property to move it out.
That's
You
all.
might
I'm
wanna
sure
consider
that's
a
part of the
minimum bid.
Normal, standard
It should be, but as long as we,
But if they're going to accept any bid that comes in, they
So I'm
can
just,
decide on the bid.
just to Shauna, we could word that, I suppose, so, our motion here would allow administration to.
obtain bids.
Draft the
Put it
RFP,
put it in
yeah.
paper.
You basically want to authorize administration to draft, advertise, and collect bids for the sale of that property.
Through an RFP, yeah.
Would you like us to say, put the closing date the Friday before your next council meeting? That's in February, but it's not a bad time.
Which is a month
Yeah.
from here,
Yeah.
I think so.
We should move as fast as we can.
So the other thing though I would like to see, Mr. Chairman, if I could, is, how do we get this out into, can we advertise this in is there still, an auto trader, like a rig trader? It used to be the oil field trader, and I haven't seen one for years, but.
So we will be required to advertise it on the Northwest Partnership Trade Agreement pages, where industry people go to find out goods and services being sold by governments. It will likely go in our local paper and on our website and various social media. That's our
The market
accepted.
for this though is the oil field.
But I was gonna say, the one thing that probably wouldn't hurt at all, is a lot of the oil fields using it a lot now is Kijiji.
Okay.
Put it where it refers back to looking at like where they can find the information or whatever, but there's a lot of equipment bought and sold in Kijiji now.
The Alberta Purchasing Connection is the
Okay,
site that
thank you.
Sean was talking about, that the Northwest Trade Partnership mandates we use. It does get quite a bit of traffic from the oil field sector, just because they know we've got graders they like. But yeah, absolutely, we have actually had success even with job advertisements through Kijiji.
So I think it's imperative that this goes out on advertising in Kijiji.
And
Good point.
get it out as much as we can, yeah.
Because that's what the market we have to, is we have to get it to the oil path.
Also, if I may, I would, probably stick it on the AMC.
Yes. You got enough information to?
Yeah, we'll,
You got one to create a motion?
we'll close it on the 9th of February and then you can, make your decision on the 14th.
Councilor Needs?
Do we want to put in our minimum number? Do we want to
No.
go-
No, just not necessarily any or the highest. Councilor Rowe?
What about your, previous, job you had, is there anything that they advertise or?
Oh,
School
they
district.
advertise through?
Yes.
He's talking about the school, so,
School,
Oh, yeah,
make sure.
you're
they
clear,
know-
you
Oh,
have to run the schools, right?
Make
right.
sure they know. about it.
And this would make a great interview.
We
There's been a bunch of
can
kids
send
playing
an
here for
email.
years.
I should mention.
Yeah, make sure that they know about it for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? As per Councilor Nyberg's nomination, all in favor? Motion, pardon. All next delegation here. Are you Glenda? Yes, Glenda, if you could move up into the middle seat here, if you would please, and we'll go through with a round of introductions, starting with Marlene over here.
Morning.
Shree Leeds, Erskine Buffalo Lake.
James Nyberg, Erskine South Ward, and Councilor.
You got Cassidy Assistant Senior?
Larry Clark, welcome to Councilor.
Dave Grover, Big Valley.
Wayne Nixon, Denell Red Willow.
Wes Gilbert, Glen Morandian.
Nikki Thorstensen, Communications.
Randy Burshak, Technology, and here's your remote for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And in the back, we have,
Langdon Chambers, Secretary.
And I'm Glenda Farnham, I'm Senior Municipal Relations Liaison for STARS. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and then a couple of new faces as well. So I'm just very pleased to be here and bring you your annual update about STARS. Any certain area I need to point this at?
Straight ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I thought, well, just for a couple of new faces, the municipal initiative has been going on since the beginning of STARS 1985. So it's been a growing program as far as sustainable support for a service that we are all privileged to have as Albertans. A STARS type of service is not available across Canada, so we are one of the fortunate few. And so, you know, as it is growing, I said the municipal initiative, I have been working directly with municipalities now across the province for almost 12 years. So being able to have this opportunity now to connect with you on an annual basis is a key part of keeping us all in line together, that, you know, we continue as a united effort as Albertans to continue to make sure that we have an additional option for all of our emergency protective services for our residents. So we'll get started, if that's okay. Do you mind if I stand? I feel.
You can stand, sir.
Okay, thank you. So just as a kind of a brief year in review, STARS has now flown over 36,000 missions since inception in 1985. And we have now grown to be 6 bases across 3 provinces. So now we have 3 in Alberta, 2 in Saskatchewan, and 1 in Manitoba. In 2012, Saskatchewan and Manitoba actually approached us and said, geez, you know, Albertans so fortunate that we want to have the same thing that you have for our residents. So that's kind of how that evolved. Now across the 3 provinces, we have 11 helicopters in total in the fleet, and we are averaging 8 missions per day. Now, 5 of those missions per day are in Alberta alone. So significant difference there. Education is also a very key part of everything that we do. We have 2 traveling kind of mobile classrooms, if you will, that serve Alberta. So one in the kind of the northern half and one in the southern half. And STARS is world renowned known for their critical care skills. So it only made sense to work very more closely with our communities that we serve by being able to bring these training sessions, bring the bus, spend an entire day in your community working directly with your nurses and physicians, being able to recreate actual trauma cases and provide them these training opportunities. It's really vital that, the rural communities have that opportunity, because most of the smaller communities, your medical personnel cannot leave your community to go and leave and go for training. So we bring that right to them, and it also builds a relationship that we work more directly with them. So last year we were able to serve 161 communities to bring that training opportunity. In total, we currently have more than 41,000 regular annual major gift donors. So whether they're individuals, corporate sector, or municipalities. This does not include calendar campaign participants or lottery participants, and the lottery is getting ready to launch next week as well, a key part of our sustainability. But just in total, as far as annual dedicated donors, more than 41,000.
What's your 4,200 remote industry sites?
Yes, our industry sites are a key part of what we do. That is kind of our only revenue generating program, in that, industry will call in. Some of them have thousands of sites that are, on a regular basis, and some of the larger ones would have like a block funding that they would provide.
So there's a site that is just a donor site, or is this a site that you go to, or what's the deal with that?
Okay, registered sites are, as I said, it's more industry, but it's not just for industry. We brought that information to our municipalities as well for like well-established, let's say, farmers, ranchers that maybe, there's no changes in their site location. So they can call in and register a site for, I believe it's $150 a year.
Okay.
So then you would post, you'd get a number, like say your site is 1234, and you'd post it on your area, where your farm or ranch is located. And it also helps with your neighbors in the area, because if someone was to have a car accident right next to, they saw the site posted, they could call in and say, I've had an accident and I'm at site right next to site 1234. And we would have the maps and everything to pull up the exact location, be able to work with all of the other immediate local resources in order to respond.
Actually, with Conoco, we were set up that way, and I don't know if the counties that bought them out did the same thing, but we dealt through disaster services with those sites. So that if there was a major, the RCMP had it, the municipality had it, then in the areas we worked in, so any of our major compressor sites had big signs on them. And it was a STARS, basically a GPS site or a landing where there was sufficient space to land, and you could transfer somebody there and get a helicopter and get them out.
I wonder if we should do that with some of our outlying communities, Paul? Just a thought.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if something's going to happen in those, out in our outlying communities, like our hamlets, it would be sure nice to have that site so that and I know, okay, the last meeting I was talking about our ground ambulances have sometimes hard time getting to point A or point B.
There are more municipalities that are looking into, and we wouldn't charge for that as well when it is, just in the interest of building our emergency protective services responses. There are more municipalities that are identifying in some certain locations of their county that, could be identified as key rendezvous points or, response sites. So certainly, like if you would like to work with, I have a contact within the Emergency Link Center who works with municipalities directly, so that, we could maybe help you to identify, because that would be a key part is, identifying through aviation what areas are actually available and what areas would work.
I'm just thinking of it. Right now, the one that comes to mind is at the lake. We have a major problem at the lake, and we just got a new piece of property that's bare and clear, no wire lines around it. Be a perfect place to land that big old helicopter if we needed to, because they have trouble up there. That'd be something to think about.
That definitely, and at the same time, I brought this information previously to you, is for any kind of public events, once a year, if you have a rodeo every year, you have any kind of, the
Yeah.
public event, you can call in and register for that weekend. It's $6 a day. And you only have to register for those 2 days that, your event is happening once a year. Maybe you can even, just let us know, and each year, register that, and you have that direct link to STARS then. And we have the direct location of any incident happening, but at the same time, you also have that direct link to STARS physicians. So as soon as, your call would come in, you have that direct link for whoever is the first responder on site that may not necessarily be a medical person, that they have that direct link to the physician as to how they can help.
Well, our current Roshan Sands, Buffalo View Estates, any given weekend can have 10,000 people there during summer. And we have one road in and one road out, so.
Right. Oh, that would be a really key component.
And now
yes.
we have a piece of property and it's all treed, right? Except this one piece of property that we got cleared.
Okay.
For the most part.
Well, discuss them, please let me know. We can help. So, we'll keep going here.
Thank you, sorry.
No worries at all. So, time, tools, and talent are a key part of everything that we do. So we have the helicopter available, across all the provinces that we serve. That is our ability to save time. Saving time saves lives. We also have the tools, such as like night vision goggles, giving us the capability to be able to land at calls at night, and almost 50% of our calls are at night. We also have the capability of, the expertise, the equipment in the back of the helicopter, which I have provided you some insight into that last year, as well as blood on board. We're the first in Canada to bring this life-saving measure right to the scene of an accident, and now we have it across all provinces, all bases. Universal blood on board, blood that can be accepted by any one of us, and we are seeing significant change in being able to improve patient outcomes and save lives with blood on board. We have the talent in the back, in the bottom left corner, as you can see, with our pilots being able to be ready to land in all kinds of diverse situations at a moment's notice. As you can see, that happens to be a forestry incident. Quite complex in being able to land in that type of situation. Or the talent in the back of a helicopter. Our crews are world-renowned, known for their critical care skills, as well as the fact that we are able to accommodate all sizes of patients. So that's another key aspect. So level of care, I'll just briefly touch on this, is, we're always trying to stay on the leading edge of technology. So as I said, we're very innovative. We're first to bring blood on board. We have the new video laryngoscope, which allows us, has a camera and a light on the end of the scope, allows us to be able to intubate a patient, which is probably one of the most complex types of situations that our crews will ever do, is intubating a patient when they can no longer breathe for themselves. We have the iStat lab, a handheld lab that allows us to do blood results instantaneously in the air. It's always, people joke about how, I go to the hospital, get my blood results, and it takes, 2 days to get my results back, and we can have it instantaneously. A really key aspect and a very important factor. So lots of different complex, high-level equipment is in the back of the helicopter. It's very much an airborne intensive care unit. Types of missions, like a lot of people don't realize that the majority of all STARS response is for the general public. So the need and the demand, I'll give you a little bit overview here. See, more than 50% is medical emergencies, followed by motor vehicle collisions, and then trauma-related. And recreational as well for those sledders and quadders out there. At the top, though, I want you to understand that in the medical emergencies, motor vehicle collisions, and trauma-related, there are aspects of industry-related accidents to those factors. We did separate, though, at the top, where an incident that happened actually at on site in a forestry incident, for example, or right directly at a rig site, or else maybe a heart attack or stroke on the combine in the field. Those are the two, in on-site examples there at the top for industry accidents and agricultural. So let's have a look at,
Just going
Yes.
back to the equipment there, our ambulance has a
Here?
compressor, chest, compression, what do they call that?
a Lucas, yes,
No. What do they call that?
Lucas?
Lucas.
Lucas, yeah,
Mhm.
and it's, doesn't take up much room, but it's, the ambulance attendants think it's a great tool.
Yes, and we had looked at that as well. But I think that the medical need on our side of the spectrum didn't really warrant, because we did look at that as far as it's very complex in the fact that weight balance ratios for us and allowing for, you know, and so our crews there's the capability of being able to do that if needed. You know, it is a really prime example of a good item to have, especially for ground ambulance in a lot of the situations. By the time that we reached the patient, I think that it just did not prove to be, you know, more complex things that we have for the critical side, and like the airborne ultrasound, you know, to detect collapsed lungs and to detect any kind of bleeding in the belly. There's a lot of other equipment that just kind of ended up making the cut, let's say, at where the Lucas did not. But yes, you're right, it is a very, very good example of an excellent piece of equipment. Okay. So, County of Stettler. So I wanted to let you know that I realized, and I'm not sure I have it on there. Yes, I realized in going over and redoing the statistics that in 2016 I had missed 2 scene calls. So there was actually 8 scene calls then, where I only have 6 listed there. So 16 calls in 2016 as well. And so you can see for last year, then the scene calls remain about the same in your area, and the critical care transfers from your hospital were down. So, and again, realizing that we're only called for critical transfers when, you know, a patient may be deteriorating rapidly, you know, there may be a sepsis, these types of situations where we would be called for that. So on an overall average then, 69 total missions for a 5-year overview. So still roughly the same, that on an annual average, you're seeing about 14 missions per year within your county. So a little bit more than 1 every month. And to give you an idea of, let's say if we're talking just mission-related costs only, nothing else that entails STARS or having base operations and all those other aspects, just mission-related costs around 14 missions per year. It represents about $100,000 worth of service value to your residents. So hope that you will feel very confident that you are a key aspect of helping to save lives, and that you are a vital partner in being able for us to continue to provide safety and a quality of life for your residents. So STARS is fueled by generosity. Not much has changed here. When I bring you this aspect every single year, not much has changed. On the right-hand side for expenditures, the red and blue represent the aviation and medical components, so more than 2/3 of the pie. Smaller pieces continue to be like base operations or, administration costs. Let's say we're at 14%. Please keep in mind that's well below the CRA allowable of 35%. So we're very cognizant of trying to keep those kind of costs in check. On the left side for the funding, the red represents what we receive from Alberta Health Services government for 3 bases in Alberta. So just roughly over $7 million a year, roughly 20% of our budget, which leaves 80% to continue to be fundraised. Now of that 80%, about half is generated through the calendar campaign, the site registration program that we spoke about, and the STARS Lottery. As I said, the STARS Lottery is going to launch next week. The STARS Lottery, you know, for those of you that are new, STARS is the only charity in Canada that has a home lottery that has had a sellout for 23 years straight. We are the only one. Last year, very hard times. Last year was the very first time that we were threatened to not have a sellout. We appealed to every Albertan and said, thank you very much for buying your lottery ticket, but would you consider buying one more $25 single lottery ticket? Do you know that we sold more than $1 million in tickets in the last 24 hours? Now that is Albertans saying we care. And so we came in at 97%. But as far as we are concerned, in hard times, that was a sellout. And we are still so grateful to every Albertan that continues to support us, because that's a key aspect. It generates more than $12 million net each year, which provides for more than one base in Alberta. So buying a lottery ticket does make a difference, yes.
Do you top out on how many lottery tickets are sold?
Yes, there is, considering a sellout, that's it. There's a certain amount.
It's a lottery, that's the gaming commission.
Yes, you have.
You put in your application, you have, 5,000 tickets and or whatever the number.
That's right, and that's
50,000,
all you
that's
can have.
It has to be for the lottery, when you make your application, you have to tell them how many. So you can tell somebody, you have a 1 in 7 chance of winning, whatever.
Right.
Because the point that I was getting at, there was someone that approached me saying, okay, they were looking at buying a lottery ticket, they're sold out. It means that they were saying that, no, it was almost to the point where we don't need your money back for it. So it deterred them saying, from going forward and purchasing lottery tickets in the future. So I guess from that standpoint, they would have to say, okay, not a lottery ticket, or just to make a donation to.
And we do. We have lots of donors that do that.
I guess the part was that it deterred them enough, saying that not being able to buy the lottery ticket, that they were kind of shunned at that point.
Oh, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say, because most of the response that we receive, if they're told that, we're completely sold out, we still have lots of donors that call back and say, I will just make a donation. Or they top up on calendar campaigns, and we have lots of events across the province that are fundraising events. So we have lots of aspects to say, well, if you weren't able to buy a lottery ticket, would you consider participating in one of our events or making a donation to that? So there's lots of other aspects.
I guess what we would do is to those people say, okay, if you really want to go and join in on the lottery ticket, that's get out there much sooner, not wait till the last.
True, and people do, once you have purchased a ticket, then you are entered the next following year. You are alerted ahead of time because we have a loyalty draw. So usually, just in the loyalty draw, they're sent a letter or an email that says, the lottery is coming up, and you have an added bonus to be put as a participant in them. Usually, we are always, don't quote me because I don't want to jinx us this year, but usually we are about 50% sold out just with the loyalty draw. Loyalty participants, I should say.
Thank you.
Okay.
What about insurance, medical insurance or accident insurance or whatever? You get, are you able to collect money there at all?
Helicopter, rotary wing service is not an insurable service in Canada. So there is no aspect of that, which is all the more reason. We've 32 years now that we are operating as a charity. And as I said, we're just very fortunate that we have so many people that continue to support. Ontario, for example, has a huge operation that's similar to STARS, that's completely government funded at about $160 million per year. We've started as a charity, and after 32 years, it's working. So we just continue to ask people to remember that we need to continue to protect and preserve it for our future generations.
Do Saskatchewan and Manitoba have the lottery draws, or is it all run under this thing?
We did try lottery in Manitoba, it didn't work very well, so we are looking at it again in some different aspects maybe. We have had a Saskatchewan lottery, we started that a few years ago, and it is getting more successful. It was almost a sellout, very close last year, so we have started those as well, and they are progressing to try and be more of the fundraising model like Alberta, you know, so, but their governments at the same time, you know, in order to at least establish that they had a STARS type of service for their residents, so they initially, you know, put a good foot forward in order to help us establish those bases, and then we continue to work there and build on the fundraising model. And, you know, to create community events, as well as the lottery, a few different aspects.
And then Albertans that make donations to STARS, does that money stay in Alberta?
Yes. All three are separate, so even government funding, like yourselves, you know, that stays in Alberta. There is a municipal initiative program in Saskatchewan as well, so.
Sounds good, thanks.
Okay. So in total, just in closing on the budget side of things, after all is said and done, it still leaves us about 40% that has to be fundraised from our municipalities, the generosity of individuals, and our corporate sector, which equals just over $16 million a year that we have to continually find. So there's kind of an update on where we are.
Just if I can.
Yes.
So from last year to this year, did you have a budget increase?
Good question. We've been pretty stable right now as to where we're at, but we did have to dip into reserves.
Because I know our donations have stayed the same.
Yes.
And I know that your costs probably have went up.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if that should be translated as well, right? Usually there's a 2% increase across everything.
Right.
Seems to be.
Well, and that's where we've had some municipalities, as we'll talk about this then. Some municipalities have offered that, you know, they will consider an increase. So currently, we're at more than 90% of all rural municipalities across the province are participating in this program. So we're kind of closing the loop on that, rallying the troops and bringing everyone together. As well as we are having urbans. The yellow stars represent the urbans that have been coming on board, villages or towns that are saying we would like to do our part as a, you know, a $2 per capita initiative. So we're currently growing that as well. And last year, pardon me?
Is the town of Stellar in?
No, but on their behalf, I haven't asked them yet. I haven't had a chance to ask them. First, Flagstaff, you can see a little kind of a circle of yellow stars. What they ended up doing, what they said that they would do, because they had the capability, is they pledged a $2.50 per capita on their entire regional, so that they were putting in on behalf of all of their towns and villages within their county, regional support. So, you know, we're looking at those opportunities as well. Or, for example, we have some where you see the larger red stars. Those are our municipal leaders that have all reached more than $1 million in giving and are giving at significant levels on behalf of all of the regional population. So, for example, County of Grand Prairie or MD of Greenview are giving at a $200,000 per year rate, recognizing STARS as a vital aspect of their emergency protective services, like you. We're a standing item in their budgets. And so now it's just, as we try to bring more and more of Albertans together with this program, at the same time, we do look always for municipal leaders that are willing to maybe, you know, increase their contribution. So currently, anywhere from $2 per capita up to $65 per capita, and everything in between. We have municipalities that are on the standing motion that are making those kind of contributions on behalf of our sustainability. So does that kind of answer your question? Okay, so, and last year we had our first opportunity that I was asked to make a presentation to the Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation. So our very first First Nations has come on board, and I'm working very closely with that chief in order to have the opportunity to access some of the other First Nations as well. So I want to thank you again for very important patients on their behalf. Thank you for helping to save lives. Like Stacy, who had a car accident. She was as a young girl, she was a passenger in a vehicle that fell more than 917 feet. She was virtually irrecognizable, and at the same time has gone on to have a full life. Or Brody, who had an industry accident. As you can see, he ended up losing both of his legs. But at the same time, says that we gave him the opportunity to have a normal life. And he went on to marry his high school sweetheart and has 2 beautiful little boys. Or Gordon, who suffered a massive heart attack and ended up, you know, still being able to be here with his grandchildren. Says that, you know, without the crew in the back and the way the helicopter is equipped, he wouldn't be here today. So these are all prime examples that could happen to any one of us. So I want to thank you again for being a municipal partner. Thank you for recognizing STARS as a vital aspect of your emergency protective services for your residents through a standing motion. Thank you for helping us to ensure the safety and quality of life for your residents, and at the same time protecting and preserving STARS for our future generations. After all, we are all STARS.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you. Is there
Any other questions for Rhonda? That's it. We'll invite you for lunch if you'd like to stay for lunch, buddy.
Oh, thank you very
It's right
much.
Right in the building.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And if it is up for discussion, I would appreciate if there is consideration at any time, or even next year, if there's any consideration for an increase in support, or your kind consideration to talk with your town as well, and I can request.
We will have that conversation.
And I can request to meet with them as
They may be
well.
requesting to meet with you.
So I would greatly appreciate that.
I got an idea for a motion.
Okay, that's awesome.
It's an interesting,
Yes.
it's an inside.
We'll leave it at that, but thank you very much for any consideration.
Just going back to the page of statistics there, the missions per month. Or
Yes.
Missions. I wonder, it's got places around the county, but I wonder how many of those calls were Stettler itself, the town of Stettler.
The Stettler scene, now that would entail anything that was in or near Stettler, usually between a 5 and 10 kilometer radius, unless there is another community closer. We code to the closest community. So they could be actually within Stettler, or they could be just outside of Stettler.
And I suppose the inter-facility transfers could be people from the Stettler itself.
Certainly,
Well.
those are critical care transfers, so they could be Stettler, you know, within Stettler itself. It could be, let's say, an accident outside of Stettler where they were brought by ground ambulance, and then it's determined that it's of a critical nature, and now we have to land to take that patient to a higher level of care. It could be someone from one of your neighboring municipalities as well, that, you know, might have been a rendezvous and now they've come into Stettler and now we have to come pick up that patient. But at the same time, then, you've got to remember all of your bordering neighbor municipalities, they may have missions that are actually Stettler residents as well. Because we all travel, right? We all, for work or for pleasure, we all go to neighboring areas.
And I know our ground ambulance, Yvette, covers a huge area.
Well, basically because we offer ALS service, we go right up to the Saskatchewan border, so.
Yes.
Yeah, we work a lot with STARS. You guys are wonderful. The inter-facility transfers though, they seem low.
It is lower, and you know, we've seen in other areas, sometimes it could be aspects like maybe you have a new physician that doesn't really know about STARS, which is all more reason that we're trying to, on a regular basis, at least every couple of years, you know, have a training session so that they all know how to call STARS and all these other aspects when it's, you know, viable. That
Does that include a fixed wing?
as far as
Is it a fixed wing? Is that where you're?
no, these would all be strictly STARS missions. So there might be some components there that you might have some new medical personnel, and maybe we do need to have a refresher type of thing. For education, I'm not really sure, because you know, it is showing that you're more consistent in the 7, 8, 10 range, you know, or maybe a lot of them did end up going by ground and fixed wing instead. There could have been components that they went by fixed wing. Maybe we weren't available because we were on another mission, so they did go by ground and fixed wing.
I am assuming though that, in the total of the interfacility transfers, we can't land the big helicopter at Stellar Hospital anymore. So we landed at the airport and the ambulance transfers to the airport. And we're seeing the big helicopter come out more and more all the time, so I'm just wondering if that got included.
I wasn't aware that you're no longer landing at the hospital.
The little ones, we can't.
The BK, but not the
one, we can't.
AW.
Yeah. So he just lands there and
Yes.
we just slip out. About the time it takes to move the patient on the stretcher to the little stars, we can load them in the ambulance and have them out at the airport.
Okay, so that could be an aspect too.
Well, typically, as a county, we've traditionally donated $10,000 a year to STARS.
Yes.
But our county is growing slowly, but steadily a little bit. So this year, I think I'd be prepared to make a motion that we donate $11,000 to STARS. And
Mr. Stolberg, if we could, I would think if we went with a 10% increase, because we are gonna be taking over WAFA and have some, I think the standing motion says that we do $2 per capita, but if we went a 10% increase, would be about the same amount
it's
of
the
money.
same because we're 5,500 people.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just saying for ease of the administration, that's all.
So we're gonna get there anyway.
Yeah, so anyways, regardless how it's.
Just for ease of the administration, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I would think as long as it arrives at the $11,000, and once again, we would take it from our rural development fund. That's my motion.
Mr. Chairman, over here. Councilman Jen.
So like when you're saying that it costs the STARS, or the cost that they put into, say, the missions that they fly, you notice that there's about 100,000 missions, about 14 missions, so that's $7,000 approximately per mission. So like I look at $11,000 or $10,000, hardly covers everything.
That's right.
So I'll say that as a municipality, we're very much on the receiving end of benefiting that multiple lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I don't know about yourself, Mr. Gender, but myself and many people that I know contribute to STARS as well. So, and there's trail rides for STARS and one thing or another, fundraising things within the county of Stettler. So, you know, that's, and we're donating on behalf of the people.
Yes.
Of the county, and so we do other donations as well. So I'm just saying that there's far more funds raised than the $11,000 that we as a municipality donate. So.
I just wanted to, for realization, I believe there's a lot of people that don't know what it costs to do one mission. I just wanted them to be aware of, say, okay, this is $7,000 that it costs every time for STARS to go for an municipality. That's the only point that I would.
Right. You know, there is a more of the smaller business, or in many of the community service clubs, there is a program that we started about 6 years ago called the Fun to Fly. So at that point in time, it was based on an average 90-minute mission. So when you get into the further outlying areas, there is other costs involved. But just in order to build the program, you know, on an average basis, so we took a 90-minute mission and it was at $5,400. Certainly costs have gone up now. Not only just medical costs, you know, medications, fuel, all kinds of aspects, different things that are required now for the new equipment. Narcotics, we carry the thrombolytic drugs, like a lot of changes have happened, right? So now our average cost has increased, of course. along with, I mean, that just makes sense, everything goes up, right, over the years. So now we are, you know, we still have that program in place. We still ask those service clubs if they will provide for funds for a mission at $5,400, you know, but realistically, if you and I were talking, that we are looking at more of a $7,000 range. So that was what I based it on as far as for actual costs of a mission when I gave you that total. So just so that there's no confusion, if you hear about the Fun Flight program and it says $5,400, so, because we do still, you know, we ask a lot of the community service clubs to provide for that. And we have lots that do that on an annual basis. Every year, that's their contribution, and they get a plaque for an actual mission that happened, you know, within their community that they provided for. So I just want to clarify that in case you find out about the Fun Flight program.
Any other comments on that? We do have a motion on the table. From Councilor Stillberg, to raise it from 10,000 to 11,000.
I just, my only concern with that, Les, is the fact that we might be already over that point when we took over, BOFA and our increase in,
Regional population.
I'm just looking here right now,
But we've always, ever since I've been on council, we've always donated 10,000.
but it's a per capita basis.
$2.
Oh, it is.
That's the original, that's what I'm just getting at, the original motion was $2 per capita. So when we took BOFA on, we already moved up, and we've also had an increase in population. You might already be, unintentionally, you may be moving our donation down.
Oh, I see. Okay, well then I'll make sure if the motion reads $2 that.
Or do you want to go $2.20 or something? $2.10 or $2.20.
Oh, I see a 10% increase.
Yeah, that's the only reason I said that. I'm not, I'm.
It does clarify it.
I'm fully in support
Agenda?
Well, that's
why
I missed it.
Yes, it's, it is in my area, and I get phone from numerous taxpayers within that area concerned with the amount of water that the Lone Pine Colony was putting an application in to draw out of the groundwater supply. Yvette did follow up with the consulting company that put the application in the paper to get the water licensing back to us. So, I guess the one request I had from the landowners was there anything we as a county could question Alberta Environment, or was there enough water supplied to the colony that they could expand to what they needed to with the water that comes off the old co-op line or the County Stepper line, or into that also the Shirley McCall line.
Yeah, there's a few things that I'd like to, ask, and you, Larry, probably know this, is what's the length of that line?
The length of the line they're going to run?
No, the length of the Sherman-Town line that's already in existence.
Okay, they exist right now off the 4-inch County Stepper line. That was the co-op's line.
Yes.
And they come off the 4-inch and run about 1.25 miles with 2-inch to their colony.
Okay.
So directly south of the colony is where they tie in. Shirley McCall would be on the railroad track south of Pine Creek. So if we needed to get a bigger source of water, the water people could work from either end and increase, open their valves up, or it would be, I would think, like a 600-foot line.
So, from being on the Shirley McCall for several years, and also as from the county's perspective as well, is that what I get from their applications, they want to cut that line off and use their own water. But to me, for a big organization like themselves, I think it's about 14,000 cubes, which is not a huge amount for the size of their operation. That'd be, $2.45 a cube or whatever it is. But I can't see that, the cost of putting that line in there in the first place, and I suppose the co-op. Pardon me?
The cost of putting the 2-inch in, actually, Dave joined the co-op.
Okay.
Then they stepped out of it.
Okay.
So then they came in after, so they actually had to pay to put the 2-inch line back down.
But the 4-inch line, and that's a couple of miles already, is it?
The 4-inch line runs from Botha to Gaspé.
Okay.
So it's 8.5 miles.
But it's about 1.25 miles away
From the 100 mile.
Okay.
And the Shirley McCall just runs, we're on the north side of the creek, and the Shirley McCall runs down the railroad.
So there was a expense to do that, and also if that line was abandoned, it would have to be flushed or abandoned. It would either have to, if it was kept in use, it would have to be flushed, and if it didn't, it would have to be abandoned.
See, what happened when we sold the Gaspé Water Co-op assets to the county is that all lines were to be taken into account for that. Lone Pine Colony did come to the county and ask them to release the tie on that 2-inch that they had put in themselves. So effectively, it would be the County of Steller 4-inch line, and that water comes from just on the mile east of Botha. There's a source off Shirley, and then at Gaspé there's a source off. So the water could come either direction, basically.
Okay.
And so that would be up like to Randy and Garth, and then if they quit using water, they'd really have to be balancing where their water's coming from in order to make sure that was chlorinated properly.
Yes.
Yeah, and that would be the issue. And I would think probably what they're thinking is they would tie into that 2-inch line, right, basically where the tie in the county is right now, and run their water out. They'd save a mile and a quarter of a line that way.
I guess from the perspective of both the Shirley McClellan and the County of Stettler is that that's a fair use of water, quite a sizable use of water. So, and what they've led us to believe all along is that the more water we use up to a certain point, and we're way, the town of Stettler, the plant is way underused, but the more we use, the cheaper the water comes to the people, all the people who use the water here in the Saskatchewan border sort of thing. So I don't think I'd want to allow this, and I don't think that, and from what I can gather, it's not been approved by the government yet, so I wouldn't want to give the colony any indication that we just approve that, because I think it's detrimental to our supplying water to all of our customers.
I also, from the residents that have complained, Counselor, they're worried about their groundwater sources because it is gone. And, as you go through these tests, they've tested the two wells, P1 and P2 quite exclusively, but they're just going by old tests off the other wells. So, they haven't even tested the neighbors' wells like a seismic company or anybody would do to what the adverse effects may be to their wells. So I do understand their concerns. I'd said to Yvette that we would have to be fully aware that if that groundwater aquifer was drained there, that we, as a county, could be demanded right away to get water over to them too.
And I don't think it's in their best interest either to discontinue that line, just because of that same thing you mentioned, because if that aquifer is depleted,
They're gonna go back to
Maybe
line.
screaming at us for water.
So, Mr. Chairman, have they indicated that they do want to not take our water still?
In this package, it says they would basically discontinue use of the supply water.
Okay, so has anybody talked to the colony?
I talked to the colony, not from the county stellar perspective, but as the chairman of the water cooperative. We met.
How long ago was that?
That would have been, the last I talked to them probably was 6 months ago, just in the parking lot one day at Canadian Tire. But the time before would have been last year at Christmas time. They asked me if I would come in representing the co-op when we were going through the whole sales agreement. And representing the co-op as with them as members of the co-op, could they buy more water from County Stellar if this whole transaction went through? Which at that point it was indicated, yes, they certainly could, with the whole fact about there's more than ample supply available out of the treatment center, plus out of the line, that there was lots of water available. So they were actually talking about wanting to buy another 4 shares so basically another 8 gallons a minute, and then that part, as I understand, did they ever come back in again, Beth?
No, but we also told them that, they didn't really need to go to the expense of buying the additional shares, that because the water, co-op was now the county of settlers, we could now service them based within our allocations off the Sherwood Phone. So if they wanted to buy more water, they were welcome to buy more water.
So what's the change? Why did they go this route versus buying more?
They put this application also in the 2014, okay, and it was turned down. So it is, I think, probably the whole background with it is paying physically for drinkable water at your sales point, whereas you could, they have to run lines, which was indicated to me that the Grow Forward grant was going to pay for part of the lines. But if that was the case, you still got to put all that pipe in the ground, you still have power, you still have pumps to maintain, and then you have to be able to, by the analysis, you have to be able to treat that water when it gets to the colony. So there's definitely, that's not free water by any means, but to them, I think they think.
Oh, the well water you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly, that was sort of my point, is why, for the cost of, 14,000 cubes for, I don't know, for 100 people, and how many ever sections of land, and cattle and stuff, why you would wonder, why you would want to hook your own water up, because like you say, it comes at quite an expense.
So Larry, if I'm hearing you right here, the 2-inch line off our 4-inch line is owned by the colony.
Yes, it is. They put it in. Originally in the transfer, it was written up that the county would own that parcel, and we came in and talked to the county as the water plot, because they wanted to keep that line because they had put the cost into putting it. So we moved the metering equipment from the colony water treatment building to a vault.
Okay, so, and that vault is just off their land?
No, it is on their land, yes, right along the creek. Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, if they go off and then they come back on, let's say 6 months later, is there gonna be a physical cost to the county?
If they disconnected that line,
Yeah.
yes, there could be a cost to them, but yes, there would be a cost to us because we'd still have to do a tie in there for re-tie-in.
Okay, so what kind of money would we be looking at?
I think it could be anywhere from $5,000.
Well, we already got the vault there, so it can't be huge money, is it?
It would be, yeah, they basically, it depends what they wanted to do with that line. If they wanted to run this other water to the 2-inch and then go up to the colony.
Well, I know, I'm not saying, okay, so they drill the well, they take it out, and piece of water or it doesn't meet grade, or whatever the reason they can't use it anymore, we have to flush that line, of course, and then tie back into it. What's that cost of tying back into it? Typically, what would we charge a new person? It'd be 15 grand, wouldn't it?
Well, they had four shares, so that would have been
60 grand.
Yeah.
Well, we don't work on shares, we just work on time.
Yeah, which are volume, basically. A share was a volume.
Yeah, but for us, if we wouldn't work on that, what would we charge them as a county? Because we don't work on the share
It was
part.
$10,000 per 1 gallon per minute share.
Yeah, that's
1 gallon per minute usage is what the county one was. It was based on 1 gallon a minute.
Mr. Chairman, to James, are you talking about a reconnection fee?
Well, I am, and the fact of the matter is because if they disconnect, all Gatsby water co-op stuff is out the window. So if I wanted to tie in, let's say I moved in right beside them right now, and I wanted to tie in, what would the cost be for $15,000? And does it matter how much, if I can use as much water as I wanna pay for, right?
Basically, right?
Yeah.
But you are guaranteed, even if the line was fully built out, the 1 gallon per
Yeah,
minute.
but I could use, literally I could, as long as the meter could run as fast as the meter could run, I could use that water, correct?
So they're diverting water basically from Shula-McCollum through the county of Stellar, so they're instead of saying they won't be diverting water from Shula-McCollum anymore, they won't be diverting water from the county of Stellar rural lines. I would be tempted to have them surrender their shares if they wanted to close off.
They don't have shares anymore.
Well, they do, because we grandfathered all those shares in as part of the agreement.
Well,
So
that's
now
what I
it's
thought.
just-
Once you disconnect, I think you're done, because we said there was no selling of the shares.
But Yvette just told you that you'd have to ask.
They don't just have shares, if they have an allocation now.
Right.
Yeah,
We guarantee
to
them,
me-
you
to
can take
me,
that.
because of the way that we've got this, those shares are worth way more because you guys have 2 gallons a minute here.
Versus one.
Versus one. So if we fully build out, they're crazy not to keep it, in my opinion. But I'm not them. So the other side of my story, I guess, or my concern here, Mr. Nixon, I'm sorry, but I'm going to disagree with you because I have a hard time telling somebody, number one, this is outside our jurisdiction. We don't do water development in the county of Stellar other than our water lines. If I wanted to drill a well and I wanted to do it and I got the proper, I guess, legal, environmental, and policies taken care of, I don't think we as the county of Stellar should have the right to do that and change people's, I don't want this 7 people, whoever sits in these chairs going forward, to have that power, because I think it would be, in the same token, I don't think they should be able to tell you how many trees to put on your property or cut off your property. I don't think we should be able to tell people what they can and can't do with their well. If I want to take out of my personal well, I want to take 8 gallons a minute or 10 gallons a minute or 60 gallons a minute or whatever I want to do, I think that should be my decision.
Mr. Chairman, and I guess it comes down to what the aquifer will sustain. So if the aquifer won't sustain that, to the peripheral farmers as well as the people who are applying for the license, I think that's not our call, but that's our recommendation, I guess, as a county to.
I think we can make it known that we have concerns about it, but I don't think we should be making recommendations or anything along that line because it's outside our jurisdictions, guys.
A recommendation maybe was a strong word, concern, I think.
We have a concern with the aquifer. It's been brought to us by a number of our county ratepayers. This is what we have. As soon as we start saying yay or nay to these things.
But it's a legitimate concern to abandon the line, because unless there's somebody else who can make use of it,
that could be a concern.
A concern, yes.
Yeah,
It's
but
a
I'm not,
legitimate concern.
but again, anybody, we've got a line out at Mr. Stolberg's area that goes out to a guy's tee, out to the hunting lodge, and it just stops. Guy paid for it. If he wants to keep it there and tease it off, the high rates could stub it off just like they have there, and not lose it. And to me, that's, if I was 100 acres, that's what I would stub it off there and pay the 14 or 15 bucks a month that we pay to have it there, whatever it is, I don't even know.
80 bucks.
Is it 80 bucks a month?
There's $20 per,
Would they put one service, wouldn't it?
well, they've got the, we deemed this for, wouldn't it,
And I guess, Mr. Chairman, and I guess another thing, I guess, that they're assured of a safe supply of potable water, which until they treat these other wells, they're certainly not. So, I mean, again, that's the government's call, I guess, to make that recommendation.
Yes.
So, I'm just expressing concern, not a recommendation.
And I think it should be definitely worded that way, because and to make a recommendation is, yeah. I just don't wanna get in down this road.
Councilor Rowe.
Well, I've been down the road, because I actually, believe it or not, that I make a living out of my water that I have in the ground by our place. And, young fellow that bought a farm off of a retiring farmer, just down the road from me, and started a feedlot. And then he come and he wanted to get his well registered at more gallons a minute than it would put out. And I disagreed with it, because he's taken out of all of our aquifer, and the provincial government kind of back to what he was using before. Is that good, bad, or ugly? I don't know. The rest of us to live beside these people, or the person that's applying for this, that's where I'm looking at this here right now. They said, I read this whole thing, and they said they couldn't get a hold of Brett Panoski, they couldn't get a hold of his kid. They live there, they're there every night. Brett Panoski's there 95% of the time. I saw him and seen him. So why would they not go to them? Now, going back to, I worked a little bit in the water well industry. When we did a test, we tested those wells, plus you do a drawdown test on all the neighbors' wells around there to see if it's gonna affect the aquifer, and none of that's been done. So I think this outfit that's making this application should go back and do a proper job of assessing it and then come back.
Don't get me wrong, I am not, I think good neighbors are good neighbors.
Oh, I'm a good neighbor.
And I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is, if someone told you tomorrow and they came to you, Mr. Grover, and said, if you were telling people they can't increase it, then they can also tell you that you have to decrease it. So if they told you you could had to cut back your water.
I would, in a heartbeat.
Down to a gallon a minute.
Well, no.
Okay, see, now we're talking about the size.
My well was registered for 43 gallons a minute, and if I have to cut it back 10, I'm good with that.
Okay, what if you have to cut it back down to 5?
Good with that.
What about 4? See, that's where, it's a
go
slippery slope when you give power to somebody,
and I would be
you
good
can't
with
take
that,
it
because
away.
I would turn on the well that I have that's 35 gallons a minute that's registered too, and you would cut it down, so I'd still be at 10 or 12 or 11.
But,
and I'll tell you a secret, when I bought that place, multi-million years ago, my wife says, no, 70 grand for that new 2-year-old house, and that quarter section is way too much money. I said, well, 75,000 is right, because until I moved there, I had never been able to drink water out of a tap. We had to pack water, even if it was on the same quarter. We always had to pack the old drinking water. There I can drink out of it. So, yeah, $5,000 isn't much in today's thing, but at that time, I give them $5 grand more because of the well.
I agree 100% with you, but as soon as you give somebody power to take something away, you give the power to them to give them something, and that's my scare.
All I'm saying is, we shouldn't have the power, or we
absolutely
to all the other ones. We represent everybody, not only the one guy that's applying for this, and I don't care who it is, but the rest of those around there. Why wouldn't this outfit got a hold of Brett Panoski's right by there?
Absolutely, Dave, I'm not disagreeing with you, I agree.
So I think we should send them back to get a proper thing done, and then.
But that's again not our problem. This isn't ours. We cannot deal with this, guys.
Actually though, from water usage in your well, we had to register our dugouts, we had to register our wells. That's a few years ago.
You were asked to register your dugout, you didn't have to.
Well, it was to have the most allowable water on your property as you could.
Cause the government is wanting to be in your back pocket.
But on the same sense, yes, but on water wells, they could tell you. They could come in and tell you.
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, I mean, and that's where I have a problem with this, if we get into this where this isn't our area, this is Alberta environment, and we can make recommendations, and we can give, or not recommendations, but give our concerns with it, but as soon as we start, it's a double-edged sword, gentlemen, ladies, sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I agree with that. Is this, just for a discussion event, or do we need to make some kind of a statement as a county? Is this asking for our support or not?
I think, no, it's not. We saw it in the paper. Actually, Larry let us know that it was in the paper. The ad was very poor, you could barely read it. So we finally got the number and asked for the application. I think, perhaps my suggestion would be that, from the county standpoint, it's a lot of dollars to the county settler, especially in these economic times that we're in. We have, the county has 1,844,291 cubic meters of allocation off the Sherwood-McCollum. We aren't even using a third of that. So we are more than able to supply whatever additional water anyone, I think, in that area would need. I think we need to forward this, a request that the Sherwood-McCollum Regional Water Commission look at this, and they may have some concerns, and also I think perhaps the County of Stettler may want to write a letter stating that, you know, it has the potential to cause hardship to us. Not only would we have one of our lines teed off that would require care, loss of revenue, and ultimately, I believe what we pay per cubic meter of water to the town of Stettler would go up because we're losing that 15,000 cubic meters of water that's being produced out of there every year.
Mr. Chairman, I don't disagree with you again, but to me, that smacks with us telling and forcing people to take water. In the town of Erskine, or the hamlet of Erskine, we told people we weren't gonna force them to take water. And right now, what you're doing is you're forcing these people to take water.
Mr. Chairman, just to comment, they already have water.
Yeah, no, I know.
And they asked for the water.
Yeah.
But no, I want to make a motion that the county of Stettler express concern regarding the the hooking up, connecting of water wells and the disconnection of water from the Sherwood-McCollum system for the following reasons, and Yvette expressed those reasons, and water usage, I guess, was one which has the potential of coming back on the residents of the county of Stettler, and also concerns by the neighbors of depleting aquifer. And I don't know if there's anything else in there or not, Yvette, that you mentioned, but and that's just expressing a concern. That is not recommending anything.
It is so fun to disagree with Councilor Nyberg.
Once a year.
Wayne, do you think you get used to it?
What are you talking about? You agree with me all day today, Dave.
No, you were agreeing with me.
Oh.
That's where the difference is.
These are points that I kind of took out of the gist of the whole operation on it. It says on page 24 that they are requesting an additional 18,000 cubic meters. And that will be to replace the amount of water that the Sherwood-McCollum could supply to them right now. They currently pump out 66,215,000 cubic meters out of their already wells. They have another source of 57,000 cubic meters that they use per year out of this surface water from a runoff from this creek that they utilize. So like when they did these, the pumping on it, they also state that these pumping systems that they used were simulated. So they're kind of pulling some numbers. There's nothing as in a guarantee. They're expecting that, they're saying that they're not expecting any adverse effect on this aquifer that they're going to be pumping on. So they're anticipating another part that is not going to affect their neighbors on it. They're going to be pumping a total of 28,000 cubic meters out of this
these two wells, PW1 and PW2. There's no guarantee on the information that has been supplied to them from others that is going to be guaranteed. There was a complaint investigation that, if you wanted to make a complaint, and there's also one, say like for a monitoring well, that they would provide monitoring wells. All they would do is monitor wells on their own place, but they have to drill a monitoring well onto someone else's property, and it can be monitored by someone else. The wells that they are going to be drilling from, it is for no human consumption. First of all, it's too high in lead. It is not for human consumption. So I don't know how they're going to treat the water that they are going to be pumping in these wells for their own personal use. Another point is, see, like they've got a 3-year use it or lose it. So on these wells, if they don't really use it, they're going to lose it. So I think that that is why they're pushing for it compared to 4 years to now, that they really want to push for it, trying to get another council in order to try to work on the environment in order so that they can keep this going. And they will continue going on this, even if they are denied now. They will in another 3 years try and apply for it again to keep the ball rolling. There's
Just, sorry, Ernie, back that up, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
for the 3 year?
No, yeah, you said something about the council, because the council never
No,
denied it last
you're
year.
right, I have to back off that. It is AEP, Alberta Environment. They would be the ones that are providing the license. We don't have anything. All we can do is provide our concerns to AEP of what we are supposed to be doing, governing body here for the people. And our first role of a council in this municipality is to be able to show that we are representing everyone as a whole, not taking priorities of one that wants to utilize the water for the most benefit, but we've got to look at all the neighboring ones. We do not know where this aquifer starts. We do not have any clue on the amount of water that is there. And this is something that should be shared amongst everyone. And if it means down to the last drop, you share it down to that last drop until it is all gone. But if we can extend this period of time that this aquifer has got a lifetime for, by utilizing this water system that we already have in place, by all means, we should extend it for all. I wrote down, I forget what the heck would be on page 143. It says that there's no, on one quote here, it says there's no practical method for determining the spatial variation of transmissivity of heterogeneous aquifers. Consequently, it is impossible to predict the changes in water levels that will result from any arbitrary withdrawal program, either at the production well or at any point in the aquifer. Like, that's what I'm saying. You see, like, with all this water that could be possibly in this body of water, no one knows to the extent whether it's going to be depleted this year, 100, 200 years, anywhere time in there. There's no real guarantee on there. Well, one other one on page 146. So like with this, and they state this model simulation. So instead of really having practical on what is going to be a guarantee, they just say that it's a simulation. We could simulate that this is going to continue on for the next 1,000 years, well beyond any of our lifetime here. But we've got to look at it to elongate this body of water as long as we can to be shared by equal by everyone around. And I guess the last point, I just say that the chemical analysis on these, on the Gravely and the PW2 well, I have to say that in some points they're trying to compare with whether the Gravely and PW1 well are on the same aquifer. But a lot of the points, and this is on page 199, of where some of the points are correct and other ones are totally out to lunch. So like between the Gravely and PW1 and PW2, there's different variations in there. So I just find that their modeling in there does not really say consistently with Gravely's on one versus another one. I think that's what my rant.
So the motion on the table right now, who's the letter going to, Mr.?
I guess and I forgot to mention in my, motion that, we would forward this to the Shirley Clown Commission as well.
Okay.
And I don't know whether we need to go to the town of Stettler or not, but it should definitely go to the Shirley.
So who's the letter addressed to originally? Was it
The letter, this was just a statement for our for our,
so we're not gonna write a letter?
but I think we should send a letter to the Alberta Environment, of course.
Have they asked us for comment on it?
Yes, it's posted in the paper right now, that's what they're advertising.
So if there was a concern, then they bring it forward, so I think that's normally the way these work, and I don't think we need to make a recommendation, and that wouldn't be what my motion would read, it would be that we have a concern. And, I mean, they gotta show how they're gonna treat the water, I mean, that's environment, that's not our
Again,
decision.
whether they treat the water or they don't is again none of our business. If I wanna drink out of the slough, I'm allowed to live at risk, so.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, Alberta Environment have something to say about that too, is
We had a guy that wanted pumping sewer down as well, and,
I mean, that's different. I mean, what I
but
said.
we're gonna go through a charcoal filter. So, yeah, we do care what people drink and what they put back in our aquifer.
In our aquifer, but what we take out of it and whether we decide to drink it or not is another story. I'll drink heavy iron water or heavy soda water, but some people won't. So there is no guarantee that the well will drop either. So I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult, gentlemen and ladies. I'm just trying to state the point here. My concern about is a letter of who this concern goes to. If it's Alberta Environment, I do not want to alienate these ratepayers either. I think we should send them a letter and say that we are willing to talk and have the discussions, because I want them to be fully informed too, not thinking that we're going off half-cocked, as it were, just because of a few ratepayers have made some concerns to us. Because I hate getting into that situation where it's one ratepayer against another. The best way to solve that is through communication. Good quality communication has always been the key to any conflict. So I think it's very, very important that we do that.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment to Mr. Nyberg, that we include the ratepayers, including the Lone Pine Colony.
And with the offer, to have some consultation directly with them because of where our concerns are.
And the ones who have expressed concern, the ratepayers who express concern, so.
I think that's the way, because I hope they're not feeling that because we don't have any say in this. We have concerns, but we have no say.
The only thing I said is I would bring their concerns to the table. And I do know from 2014 that there was stuff on the table at that time about putting a letter out on concerns.
Yep.
And as I've been contacted as the chairman of the co-op from Alberta Environment, asking what there was for supply of treated potable water as part of the conversation. I had two phone calls and a meeting with them.
No, and absolutely, I'm not, trying to be difficult here. I'm just trying to.
Yes, you are.
Well, it's just because of you.
Oh, I thought we were voting on it. On you.
Like I said, I just see this as a double-edged sword, and it bothers me when we can tell certain people yes and certain people no. So, as long as we get that ratepayer or that letter of concern to the individuals involved, and with the idea that we're willing to talk and just put our concerns out there, maybe they come in here and they have a fix for our concerns. Maybe they have a fix for the neighbors' concerns. I don't know, but at least allow them the opportunity to bring that forward. So.
Just a question. Oh, sorry.
We got a couple over there.
Well, I read that 200-page plus Webby event sent out, and I'm like a lot of you, I found a lot of holes in it. For one thing, I asked Larry, he said they only listed poultry on there, and Larry said there is more than just that out in the colony. The aquifers, we really don't know how long the life is. I was gonna ask that, how far are the wells from the colony? Because you guys did say that, would they have to go through private land?
I think they believe they own.
Or is it all their own land? Would they have to
They own the land.
Would they have to drill and put pipes through?
There'd be road crossings and things like that, but.
So they would have to go through county property just to get it there?
Which piece are you reading?
We had the big, big
Everyone
one
get up.
on the floor there.
No, yeah, flip this one over.
Okay. Okay.
Just to tell you, I don't watch it anyhow, you can have it. There's one back here someplace.
Just to take five pictures.
And actually, I do kind of agree with James, telling people what they can and can't drink. It's their own personal choice. But I think one thing we should state is that they're one of the lucky ones. They get safe drinking water, where a lot of people wish they had that, and these guys actually have access to it and they have it, so. I don't know, they are one of the lucky ones out there that get this. There's a lot of people who I know wish that they could have something like this, and then they don't have access to it.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification.
Yes.
So we would send a letter, would we send a letter to Lone Pine Colony stating that we have concerns with this application? Would we send a letter to Alberta Environment listing our concerns, and then a letter to the Shirley-McCollum, or would we copy Shirley-McCollum, Town Stettler on the letter to the Lone Pine Colony and Alberta Environment? There are time restraints with this.
I think,
Yeah.
you know, having made the motion, I would think we send the letter to Alberta Environment and copy it to all the other parties.
Thank you.
That would be my intent.
I just, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, I almost think we should copy it for sure to Lone Pine. I think we also should follow up with another letter to Lone Pine with the concerns and the fact that we're open to conversations on with them. That being said, I guess you could still, I don't know who.
I think if we word it as being a letter of concern, just because of the following reasons.
But then I really want that open to say, listen, I want them to have the opportunity to be able to fix our concerns. Cause I still have a problem with telling somebody they can't drill a well. Cause you can tell this person they can't drill a well, and you can tell somebody else. The only difference is gonna be is volume, guys, right? I mean, if I told you, Larry, you could never drill a well in your place, well,
I would say thank you very much. I learned that from mine, so.
But if I told Dave he couldn't drill another well on his property and said the two went kaputs.
I don't say I got two,
No, but your two went kaputs and we couldn't drill another one, you had to hook up to the Shirley-McCollum.
Mr. Chairman, we're not saying that. We're just expressing concern to the government, to the Alberta Environment. They're the ones who have to make the decision.
That's what I'm saying.
I guess final decision is done. Yes.
In the letter to Alberta Environment, as listing one of our concerns that the Shirley, or the County of Stettler does have available water allocation, that we would be more than happy to negotiate with the Lone Pine Colony. Would that be good enough if we CC Lone Pine, that letter?
But I think we also wanna talk to them about their concerns, right? You talk to a lot of people, they don't like the chlorinated water, right? I mean, you talk about what you can tell people to drink and not drink. You tell them they gotta drink chlorinated water, they'll tell you to go stuff it.
I believe their concerns would have to be addressed to the environment, though, not us.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we could offer to be in the room and hear their concerns as well, but.
But what I'm saying,
Hearing
if we're saying we have these 6 concerns or 3 concerns or whatever that is, I think they should be able to address the accuser, as it were, in this case. If you have those concerns, let's address those concerns with the person that has the concerns. No, we used to talking to Alberta Environment, where they're concerned about the fact that, well, what it's gonna cost us to tie in and not tie in again, if they come back or don't come back.
But part of that is also too, as Councilor Grover brought up, that they stated that they could not talk to Penoskis. And as I said, every time I spoke to Penoskis or somebody in the yard, so.
And that may not be the colony, that may be the.
Maybe this consultant, very much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of anything.
That's the clarification, though. Yeah.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I think also that one of those points of concern should be, or statements on our part, I guess, is that we are offering Shirley-McCollum or the County of Stettler a safe supply of bottled water as well, so.
Yeah.
Because
And we have.
that's pretty important.
We could say in the letter that we have ample, available allocation. And we could list some numbers.
Right, and the opportunity, we always leave the opportunity to talk.
To discuss. Absolutely.
And then send it to Alberta Bar and courtesy copy.
Everyone, yeah.
Is that surrounding neighbors also?
The ones that,
Well, the ones who express concern, I guess.
which is the Gravely, you know, the Gravely's and the Pulaski's and Danes, yeah.
Are all of them mentioned in here? I've seen Gravely's and Pulaski.
Yeah, Danes are mentioned also. in this.
Maybe we should courtesy copy them in there. And who else?
Sinclair.
Okay, so they all, anybody mentioned in the report, maybe we should courtesy copy.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay. Do we need that motion read back, or?
Yeah.
You don't.
That was before dinner, so I don't know, you still got it, Marlene?
How many pages is the motion on?
Well, I missed some of your items.
Between the three of us.
As wordsmith.
Yeah.
I think we've all got the gist of the ideas that
Basically list the concerns, the letter goes to Alberta Environment and to the parties that, the application party along with concerned parties that are written within this application. And we've stated our concerns, but we've also opened it up for discussion.
And Shirley Closer.
And Shirley Closer, yes. You're okay with that? Okay, so any other discussion?
You'll be able to make something out of it.
All in favor? Opposed?
One opposed.
I just didn't want it to be, unanimous.
Hey, where else to go back to?
I think we're down to, unfinished business, dates for council retreat and strategic plan.
And the FCM annual conferences.
Great.
Okay, E3, request for decision, council retreat and strategic planning. I guess one of the first things we need to talk about is how we're gonna deal with this. Like the council retreat, really depends if you have that separately, how you facilitate your sessions. And Sean has looked up some facilitation for us. But it would make a big, if we have our offsite prior to facilitation or the strategic planning, we've worked through a lot of the relationship building and those pieces that may be part of the plan, So, do you have anything to say on that, Sean?
Just that, yeah, you're gonna need to decide if you want to still do the retreat, in terms of a team building exercise versus doing a retreat or meeting for strategic planning purposes only. If you do combine the two, it takes longer and, it's up to you whether or not you require or feel like you need both of those. From administration's point of view, team building doesn't necessarily have to happen right now. Strategic planning does. So if you had to make a decision, that would be where we would like you to go. If you do both at the same time, that's fine. If you had to choose one, we would beg that you choose strategic planning. Because without strategic planning, we don't have a direction. So that's what I would have to say. We went out between Tim and I, surveyed a bunch of strategic planning companies or firms that we thought would provide something fresh and new. So none of these are any ones that we've had before. So that they don't come in with a bias on what the county settler should do. They don't come in knowing what our strategic moves have been in the past. So it's kind of a clean, fresh start for this council anyways, by determining some new faces to help you strategic plan. And then my last cautionary item to tell you before you guys make a decision is you get what you pay for.
So, Larry and I had a chance, or Mr. Clark and I had a chance to talk at the agenda meeting, and the discussion around that, my thought think it would be wise to do a retreat session where we get some team building, we get to understand each other a little bit before we do strategic planning, because it could very much determine how we do strategic planning. If we're banging heads and don't understand where Wayne's coming from with his water allocation stuff, you may fight the whole time and never get an actual strategic plan put out there. But if we can come to some sort of understanding of why Wayne's thinking the way that he thinks about water, maybe then we can actually come together as a more cohesive team when it comes to strategic planning. And I'm not sure, and maybe Les, Dave, or Wayne, in your guys' past, have you done any actual team building in the past? I know we've done strategic planning, but the team building part is something that I think has always been a missing piece to the puzzle. To get to understand, I don't have to agree with somebody, but I can understand why they're making the decisions they're making. And I think that's important. When I get to the why, the how makes more sense to me, and then, you know, the reasons behind a certain individual's thinking, I think is very important to make that strategic plan. And I think it'll make our strategic plan a lot stronger. Just my thoughts.
I just have, I think it's important to do everything we do as a team, and I think we can be more efficient if we have that you know, that team building expertise, and I think that is something that we are lacking. And I think, you know, going forward, I think we do need something just to learn different ways to work together really well for the benefit of all county ratepayers. And so I think it's really important. And I agree. I mean, you need that team approach to come up with a good strategic plan to do. So I wouldn't really want to see either one of them dropped. And I know time is of the essence, so we have to get on with this so we can get a strategic plan in place. But I think it is important to do some exercises to make an efficient council here.
Can I just ask about when does our budget need to be approved?
When we set our mill rate. But you're basically, yeah, that's our, officially, we could go basically operating on our interim budget until we finalize the budget, which we set the mill rate usually in May. I think you have till July 31st technically in the MGA to pass your tax rate bylaw anyway. But you are slowing down the workings of the county of Stellar. I think a lot of the capital has been delayed so that, an example would be fire. I talked to Mark, I said, if council approved the budget tomorrow, you turned around and ordered a new BRAT, it wouldn't get here till 2019, and we would be able to do all the upgrades to it that we do when it gets here. So that's a 2-year project now. That has become a capital item that would be spread over 2 years. Some of our other capital could be dropped or postponed if council decides to approve it, or we could spread it from the 18 to 19 years. So that's holding up a little bit. We do have to do some planning for gravel. And it will kick off. Roads are wet and awful, and we need to get the gravel program up and deciding how we're going to run with it. Are we going to do road construction? We gotta get out and start signing up farmers and getting right of way. So that's what you're slowing up, and that's where then operations, we're just out maintaining the roads, but we're not doing anything. That's a strategic direction, I guess. If that's where you want us to go for a year, we can do that, but we're not gonna get anything substantial done, I guess is what I'm trying to say, until some decisions are being made, and you are slowing that process up. No, I can't see Sheree. Yeah.
But I guess in order to put that plan in place, we have to make a decision on what we need to do to put the succession plan in place to really do what we want in this budget, but for what proposed is for operating for the next 2 years after this year, and for the next 5 years on the capital budget side. So there's a lot of pieces we have to cover.
Time is of the essence. It has to get moving here.
I would like to say that, you know, if you're looking at doing a retreat because you feel it's important, and there's strategic planning, and of course we're budgeting at the same time, you know, through all that, you know, just set some dates and we'll find people to come in and facilitate those processes for you. So, you know, we're just looking for a date, and with strategic planning, if you get your strategic plan done, it helps us make your budgeting process easier. Because if you've identified priorities, we can take things in the budget that are nowhere close to your priorities and just take them out. And it makes it easier. But if we don't know where your direction is going, we put everything in the budget and hope you guys can decide. So it is, strategic planning will help the budget process go easier.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe by straw poll, who feels that we should do a team building effort and a team building and strategic plan either together or separately, and then strategic plan and team building, or neither, or one of, so the 4 options. I would personally, I would
all those.
Yeah, I would think we should do like a 1 day maybe retreat, get away, do a team building exercise, and I'm not sure, Shauna, any of these, would they do team building?
Yeah, so the only one that formally puts in any team building into this strategic planning was the one from Strategic Steps, in which the Strategic Steps principal is Ian McLaughlin. Ian McLaughlin was an old university professor. Super weird. Anyways, Ian McCormick, as that he partners with Doug Griffiths, and Doug Griffiths comes in and does a team building exercise around his 13 ways to kill a community, and tries to get everyone working towards the same community goal. So that's the only one that formally includes team building in their proposal. The rest of them, I talked to them about team building. Most of them are very passionate about strategic planning and could recommend somebody, or we could find somebody in addition to do the team building aspect, because there are people that specialize in that piece. And then the bottom one, Sage Analytics, is definitely the governance workshop is a team building exercise only. Basically, it's a simulation. You guys will all get a personality to portray in a simulated council meeting, and then your personalities will switch halfway through. And so it does do that whole finding out where you come from. So that is.
So could we do the Sage first and then go with
any
intellectual or intelligent futures?
Yeah, they're all separate proposals.
I'm just saying that that's the way I would say it's doing the 1 day with Sage. It's a 1 day deal, right? For $3,000.
It'd probably be even less than a day.
Yeah. So do that and then pick one of the other ones is what I'm thinking. So I don't know what the team building.
Yeah, you know, I've sat through a lot of strategic planning with industry, and they did try to do, you know, some of your facilitators thought they were team building and strategic. It is two totally different.
I agree with you.
It is.
Yeah,
And
totally
so there
different
is,
skill sets.
you know, there is something to be said for having, you know, 2 different people, 2 different approaches. It's totally fine. And like I said, when I did talk to most of these strategic planning firms, they did admit fully that team planning or team building wasn't in their strong suit. And then with Strategic Steps, Ian said that's not his strong suit, but he partners with somebody whose it is. So, and Sage Analytics said that obviously strategic planning wasn't her jam, but team building was. So.
And I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, in that team building, I would kind of lean towards it, but a lot of us know Doug on a personal or professional basis already, so that might be somebody that's not new to the system and might have some
preconceived.
Yeah, so preconceived ideas there, and not anything against Doug, and I think he does a great job. I'm just saying that if we're looking for new and something different, that's where. And who does Sage again? Is that
Dulegé.
Is it
Dulegé? Yes, thank you. And so with Strategic Steps, if you saw in the proposal, you can take out the half-day team building as well if you think that there is some merit in the Strategic Steps planning process.
And Sage Analytics, I mean, both Ernie and I are know who she is, and so, I mean, you're a shirt trail relative, aren't you, to Ulysses? I think so. I'll tell you how you're related later.
Good choice.
No,
but it's nothing to do with Nyberg.
No, we're not related anyway. I don't know, that's just my thought, I don't know, straw poll, what everybody else is thinking. I do believe they're two different things, that's for sure. And I do believe we need the team building aspect. Or as Larry called it, conflict resolution.
Yes, thank you for bringing that in here, but it is part of it in relationship building but the whole piece, but with what we have to look at for strategic plan, I do feel we need somebody, like that would be time well spent. Because what we come out with now for a strategic plan for year 1, year 2, year 3 could be different than what we've seen before. And I think we need to, and as council, we have to recognize every piece that could affect and make sure we're making the right decision for all of our repairs. Councilor Jenny?
Yeah, I find that I've been going through the budget, pretty much line by line for everything, making little notes, and I find that there's an awful lot of similarities between that and the strategic planning. So like it's something I look at what some of the departments, they are saying, okay, these are priorities, and I try to look at it, say if there's a council priority that it's not really there. I'd like to be able to say that we could work both of those very closely together.
Budgeting and strategic planning?
Yes.
Yes, and that is how they walk, like they do, one's on your operating side, one's on your capital side, but it does walk very closely hand in hand. And for year 2 on your strategic plan, if it's, the budget should almost be able to be laid out to us for year 2 on what we've said, unless there's a change based on what's happened in year 1.
Because it's by us setting the budget is where the heads of department are really building on where to go. If we don't really say, okay, like we might be able to say, okay, the budget isn't there, so why should they take and waste some time saying, okay, this is where we're gonna be going. In the budget, we're gonna be able to say no, or we could open up the avenue saying, okay, we can free up some money.
So I think we're saying the same thing. By doing a strategic plan, it will waste less administration's time because we're trying to guess what your priorities might be.
Yes.
And what you might have money for right now. But if you had a strategic plan in place, it would take the guesswork for us out.
Also, I guess from a go forward here, then time is of the essence. So maybe what we need to do is look, like this is just a suggestion for me as a